On the first day of her journey at UA, Setsuna Tokage was excited. She made it through the test with flying colors, and even heard that she was one out of 4 other students that actually made it through recommendation. Sure, the test was hard, and she was put up against some pretty scary, powerful quirks, but she came out on top, so forgive her if she was feeling a little confident. Okay, really confident. She was going to kick ass at UA, and nothing was going to stop her. Sitting at her desk early, she fiddled with some stuff in her bag, making sure to say hello to everyone who entered after her. These people were going to be her classmate for years. Might as well start off well. However, there was one thing she noticed as she introduced herself to each classmate. Her class was full of characters. A woman with vines for hair that recited a Bible verse at her when she introduced herself? Check. A girl with brown bob hair covering her face who squeaked when she tried to introduce herself and ran away like a mouse? Check. A kind-looking girl with an orange ponytail who's giving off big senpai vibes? Check. A dude with crazy hair and sharp teeth talking about manly stuff? Check. Hell, there's even a guy with a glue bottle for a head. But the one who caught her interest the most wasn't any of them. When she first walked through the doors to One Setsuna, wondered a little why the doors were so massive. She gaped at the intimidating size of it and wondering aloud if giants lived in these halls? Now she had her answer. Walking into the room shortly after was what Tokage could only describe as a mountain of a man. He had to be standing 6 feet 8 inches at least. He had a bushy patch of green hair on his head that made her think of a big palm tree and cute little freckles dotted in a star pattern over what she dare say were very pinchable cheeks. Looking farther down, she noticed he had massive tree branch-like arms and a broad-barreled chest that fought tightly against his uniform. The face versus body was so jarring she wasn't sure if she should swoon or swear to protect. She really wanted to know what hugs from him were like. Deciding that she had been staring for too long, she walked over to him to say hello. He was fiddling with something in his bag, muttering a little to himself when she walked over. Standing next to him, she smiled with her hand out only for nothing to happen. He didn't even notice her, too busy doing something that wasn't talking to her. Frowning, she coughed into her hand, clearing her voice to get his attention. With his massive frame, she expected a lot of things. An angry glare, maybe a confused look, but what she got threw her through a loop. He yelped. He fucking yelped like a startled child, jumping a little in place before turning to look at her with wide eyes. Face red, he stuttered out a few things, staring at her like SHE was the intimidating one. It was so confusing. She thought she was a good judge of character, but for whatever reason this guy threw her through a loop. She hardly even heard what he said before shaking her head and smiling up at him. Hey there, Green. Name's Tokage. G. Green. Yeah. Calls it a whole hair sitch. Doing a gesture with her hand to his hair, she smiled more, showing off her sharp teeth. Now are you going to keep a pretty girl waiting all day, or are you going to introduce yourself? Staring down at her, his face turned bright red, his eyes widening more before giving her a shaky smile. Oh no, he was really cute. All right, sorry, I'm Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya, huh? Nah. You look more like broccoli to me. Be broccoli? Maybe more like a palm tree? A palm tree? Snapping her fingers, she pointed at him, smiling at the confusion on his face. A bush. Will you stop just naming? Hearing someone clear his throat, they both turned to see their teacher, Vlad King, standing in the doorway. With a raised eyebrow and a wave of his hand, he gestured to their seats. Please stop flirting and take your seats. Class has started. Looking back at Green, she smirked, giving him a wink before walking back to her seat, giving a little salute to her teacher as she went. Aye, Capitan. When she looked back, she found Green still standing there, his face practically nuclear before shaking his head and scampering over to his desk, his massive frame looking almost comical in his tiny desk. Feeling her smirk spread across her face, she placed her cheek in her palm, watching the gentle giant fidget as he pulled out his stuff. Oh! This was going to be fun. The rest of the day was pretty uneventful. They got their syllabus of the year, what classes were when, and they did orientation. It was a little weird that their sister class wasn't there, but whatever, not like it was her business. Listening to the principal talk for way too long about, she lost track at this point. She sighed, closed her eyes, and crossed her arms when she heard it. It was faint, but just enough for her to hear. Turning her head a little to see, but not enough to let them know she was listening, she saw two general studies students from behind them whispering and pointing at Green. Taking a half of a step back to listen better, she leaned in. Yo, that's the guy I was talking about. During the practical exam, he ran into the fray to save a girl with brown hair. He lifted the 0-pointer. Tilting her head, she raised an eyebrow, silently repeating the word 0-pointer with her mouth. What's a 0-pointer? Looking back at Green, he didn't seem to notice people were talking about him as he listened to every word the principal was saying. He was staring straight ahead, starry-eyed, and writing into a notebook. Snorting, she shook her head before facing the front again. God, he's such a dork. I'll ask him later what that was all about. Walking out of UA, she sighed, a hand rubbing at her neck as she walked. Geez, it's always the first day that are the worst. All talking, no action. No excitement. Just bouncing from teacher to teacher and reading rules aloud. Plus side, as she enjoys her class for the most part, there are a few that may be a bit weird, even for her. There was a dude who already has a grudge against 1A for some reason. They haven't even met yet? I guess some guys need to flex to make themselves less insecure. Pausing her steps, she noticed that big back anywhere. Smiling a little more. Talk about flexing. Sidling up next to him, she bumped him with her hip, startling him. Green, I can't believe this. Not even offering to walk a girl to the train station. For shame. Startling a little, he turned to see her. His face already tinted red. W what? Do you have any idea what dangers are around at night? What would your mother say? Oh, I'm sorry I didn't notice you. Pretending to look offended for a second, she huffed before sighing. All right, fine. You're lucky you're cute. I'll let it slide this time. See cute. Humming, she showed off some teeth at how flustered he got, before laughing, raising a hand to pat his back. I'm teasing Green Bean. Relax. Tell me about yourself. As they walked off towards a train station, she listened as Green talked a little about his life. He seemed to be really happy talking about his mom, less so about his dad. Thing to take note of for later. Every once in a while she would throw in some words here or there, but she mostly listened, trying to have him talk more. She noticed that he almost changes when talking about things he cares about. He loves All Might and learning about quirks. He has a strength-based quirk, which was honestly pretty obvious, and he wants to be a rescue hero one day, which surprised her. Someone so big you'd think he'd want to fight, but instead, he seemed to be focused on moving wreckage and first aid. The way his eyes sparkled when he spoke was captivating, and the way his dimples popped up when he smiled was beautiful. She felt a twinge of something in her chest as he spoke, and she absently wondered what it'd be like to climb him like a mountain before slamming the feeling back down. No, down girl. For the next few days, they mostly just hung out. They did a battle trial where Green accidentally threw someone through a wall, and she kicked ass in her own right, smacking Monoma upside his cocky face. Sitting in the cafeteria, they seemed to have gathered a nice little group of friends. Despite his shy nature, Green seems to be really good at gathering hero hopefuls. He accidentally mistook the shy mushroom girl, Komori, as a girl he saved during the test, which she quickly rebuffed to both of their embarrassment. She teased him a lot over it, but they quickly became shy little friends, which was honestly adorable. Then there was Kendo, who, after seeing how skittish Green was actively trying to pull him out of his shell. She remembered meeting Kendo's eyes the first time he started rambling about someone's quirk and giving a silent agreement to protect this giant cinnamon roll no matter what. Then there was Tetsu, who seemed to be following Kendo around wherever she went. Something about being childhood friends. He seemed cool. Finishing up their group was Monoma, much to her chagrin. He seemed to have a grudge with Green the first few days before he touched Green without asking, and kind of went a little crazy. When he woke up, he seemed to connect to Green a lot more. Hearing Green talk excitedly, she looked up at him as he spoke, kind of just enjoying him talk. I still can't believe we have lunch rush making food for us any day. Taking a bite of her food, she laughed a little before rolling her eyes. Dude, you've been saying that almost every day. To her left, Kendo smiled before taking a bite of her own food. I'm unsure if I'll ever get used to a pro hero making me food. I personally could eat his shrooms any day, said Komori happily. shoving more into her mouth for good measure. Looking up from his own food, Monoma gave her a small smile. No offense, but I get the feeling that you'd be eating mushrooms regardless of who made them. Laughter filled the table as Komori pouted at him red-faced before conversations branching out into other topic. Nudging Green with her elbow, she opened her mouth to ask him if he started to read the manga. She let him borrow, when a deep, dark growl came from behind them. "DKU?" Turning to face the voice, she found herself staring at a very angry-looking spiky kid. He was standing right behind Green and herself, glaring straight up at Green, making him squirm. She immediately thought of Chihuahua angrily barking at a Tibetan Mastiff, which would have been hilarious if Green didn't have that terrified look on his face. Wide-eyed, his face had almost gone white, his gaze staring straight at the floor. Feeling defensive, she stood up to growl back at him. "Who the hell are you?" This little shit ignored her, his gaze never leaving Green as he slammed his fist on the table, making Green's food fly everywhere, his bowl clattering to the ground. "Don't ignore me, you fucking coward." "Oh, H.A. Kakin, P. Pleasure seeing you, he. Don't you fucking call me that." It was when Green jerked at his shout that she felt her blood start to boil. "Okay, she's had enough of this." Standing between them, she got in between them, ripping this Kakin off of him. Glare met glare as they stared each other down. She doesn't know who the hell this is, but like hell she was going to let him abuse Green like that. She heard chairs shifting to her left and turned a little to see everyone else staring him down as well. Even shy little Komori looked like she was going to do a murder, cracking her knuckles. There was a tension in the air for a second before the blonde punk let out a hard breath, stomping off. This clearly wasn't going to be the last we saw of him. One by one, everyone sat back down, the air almost electric with the intensity of everyone's looks. Sorry, everyone. Kakin gets like that sometimes. Turning to look at Green, she frowned, before turning to where he stomped off to. "You know that big pile of trash?" "Why, Kakin and I have known each other since we were kids. He has an amazing quirk that lets him create explosions." A bunch of pieces started to connect together at once right in front of her eyes. The whole gentle giant thing, the stuttering and apologizing, the way he jumped a little at explosions and would talk excited about his passions but then backpedal, the self-deprecating comments. Izuku Midoriya was bullied. She felt red-hot anger rush through her again. "Has he ever used his quirk on you?" "W what?" "And no, he, has. He ever used his quirk on you." A pause. No one at the table said anything, but all the eyes were on Green. Opening his mouth, he closed it before opening it again. "He stopped after I came to UA." Slamming her hands on the table, she got up, her food forgotten as she stomped off to the principal's office. "How dare he? Green is the nicest, sweetest boy. He's so gentle and wouldn't hurt a fly. That doesn't mean that pompous, arrogant, spiky-haired little shit could just stomp all over him like that. The school must not know. There's no way to let that bully in." Rounding a corner, she heard her name being called behind her. Turning and glaring, she continued to storm down the hallway like a bat out of hell. Green was following her, but even his pleading gaze wouldn't stop here. She was going to have vengeance. "What are you doing here? You should be getting new food. I'll be right back." He just looked at her and shook his head. "You know I can't let you do that, Tokage." Whipping around, she practically growled at him, stomping her foot. "Why the hell not?" "Tokage, No. No more excuses. You tell me right now why I shouldn't just throw this little yapping dog under the bus where he belongs. If you can't fight back, then I will." Blinking, she felt some red-hot tears threaten to leak from her face before she fought them back down. Now was not the time for angry tears. Now was the time for action. Waiting a second for a response, she didn't get one. Whipping back around, she started back on her warpath. "I can't fight back, Setsuna." She's unsure what it was that stopped her in her tracks. Maybe it was a defeated tone in Green, no Midoriya's voice, or it was how he called her by her first name. But she stopped at the end of the hall, turning back around to face him. It took a second for Midoriya to gather his thoughts, but she waited patiently. "When we were little Kakin, Bakugo and I were close friends. maybe even best friends. Our moms were friends, so as a kid, that made us friends even though we're so different. We both dreamed of being heroes, of beating the bad guy and saving the day. But then our quirks came in. His came in first, and everyone praised him, saying how amazing a hero he was going to be. When mine first came in, I was fighting with a kid over an All Might figure and broke his arm. Staring wide-eyed at him, she couldn't help but look shocked, her mouth opening before covering it with her hand. She's heard of quirk accidents when a quirk first activated, but never like that. I sometimes still hear the snap of that little kid's arm. He didn't even deserve it. We were just kids. My quirk is always on Setsuna. It's not like other strength quirks where they channel it, where they can turn it on and off. Mine is tied to my emotions, to my anger. It's gasoline to a roaring fire. I have to be careful all the time, Setsuna. You don't understand how easy it would be to seriously hurt someone. I live in a world made of cardboard. Walking over to meet her halfway, he slumped down the wall, pulling his knees up to his chest. Wordlessly, she walked over and sat down next to him. When my quirk first activated, Bakugo wanted to train. He wanted for us to spar to prove who had the better quirk, and I just couldn't. I think that was what made him angry at me. Me refusing to fight him, like I was better than him rather than equals. Then he started to bully me. He'd punch me, insult my mom, tell others to torment me, all just to get a rise out of me, so he could prove he was better. You can't prove you're better than someone who won't even play your game. Midoriya looked so defeated at that moment, like a man with all the strength in the world, but who couldn't throw a single punch. Reaching forward, she gave his hand a squeeze to get his attention. Okay, fine, I understand now, but you can't just sit here and take it your entire life. Keep turning the cheek all your life, and you're just going to end up with some really bruised cheeks. That got a chuckle out of him. It was weak, but it was there. I'll tell you what, if you can't fight back, I'll do it for you. I'm strong enough to carry both of our problems on my back. Giving a big smile, he chuckled as he rubbed tears from his eyes, slowly standing back up. Is that so? That is so. From now on, we're partners. I do the destroying, and you protect. How's that sound? That sounds pretty good. Smiling at each other with faint blushes on their faces, they hardly even noticed when the UA intruder sirens went off. Okay, everyone. It's time for the start to the semifinals. The crowd roared with applause, the stadium energy almost palpable in the middle of it all. In this corner, you know him, you love to hate him. He's the blonde-haired bomber, Bakugo Katsuki. Frowning at his opponent, a sneer spread across his face as he stepped up the final steps. His glare so intense it could melt metal. And in this corner, she's a bombshell babe with teeth that can tear. She's my personal pick. Setsuna Tokage. On the opposite side, walking up the steps, was Tokage, her arms crossing over her chest as she met his gaze with one just as intense. You know you aren't supposed to pick favorites, right? It's Bombshell versus Bombshell who will win. Letting out a breath, she sighed, her eyes closing for a second before opening them again. This was it. Her and Izuku had come far in the tournament, steamrolling through the competition like the champs she knew they were, and now the only thing in the way was him. He had been antagonistic, rude, and a bad sport. He had cursed at them and threw explosions at them all day, but right now all of that ends. She had been itching all day to get her hands on this little shit. Sure, his power intimidated her, but that wasn't going to stop her. She was going to give this yappy little dog the beating of his life, meet Izuku in the finals, and maybe make out a little. Who knows? She's always open for possibilities. Looking behind her, she met Izuku's gaze in the stadium. He seemed nervous, but he was clearly checking her out. Their eyes met, and she couldn't help herself. Giving him a wink and a little kiss, she watched him blush crimson before looking away quickly. Their friends around him laughing and patting him on the shoulder. Too easy. Turning back to face Kakin, she noticed that he too was staring up at Izuku, but his gaze was anything but friendly. A crack of a whip pulled her from her thoughts as Midnight started to speak. Okay, I want a nice clean fight, you two. No excessive force and no going overboard. This is a tournament, not a blood match. Giving a nod, she went down into her fighting stance. A pause as she stared him down, her fist clenching and unclenching. Go! Sprinting forward in an angle, she rolled, feeling fire flicker against her body before she kept running. Splitting her torso in half, she jumped just in time to avoid Bakugo's kick, it sailing through her missing half before he leapt away using one of his explosions. The problem with fighting someone like Bakugo was that he was always moving, never sitting still for long. He was able to stay up in the air for long periods of time, and he even had projectiles. All of those were things that she had too, but she had a limit to her projectiles. She can't just play keep away from him, or else she'll run out of options fast. Swinging a punch or fist disconnected from her arm, soaring at him at high speed before he ducked under it, blasting it away with an explosion from his palm. Cursing a little under her breath at the faint sting, she felt her legs break into pieces, attacking him from different angles. With a strong kick to the gut, he rolled his feet, letting out a growl before blasting at her head. Floating away from the blast, she tried to circle him like a wild animal, scanning him as she tried to find any openings. A flurry of punches and kicks connecting to anything she could find. She had to wear him down. She didn't have anything to take him out quick, so her best option was to weaken him first. Almost like he could tell what she was thinking, he crouched down before raising his arm in the air and fire a powerful blast straight up. Her pieces scattered the blast, making her squint a little against the heat. Before she could regain her bearings, he was on top of her. Gasping, his fist connected with her face reeling back before another blow to her torso. Before a third could connect, she gave him a smirk. Splitting right down the middle, she exploded into pieces before barraging him with minor blows. Each blow seemed to have made him angrier and angrier, his arms swiping at her tornado limbs. That is enough. Crouching down, he braced himself before firing a concentrated blast straight up, the crowd squinting against the pure heat it radiated. She tried to hold on. She really did. But her pieces scattered everywhere. Blinking her eyes open, she was on the ground, her ears ringing and her body sore. With the small amount of strength left, she looked down at herself. She was mostly just a head and a torso. Shit, that was going to take forever to come back. Struggling to sit up with her stumps, she felt a sharp pain rock her back, Bakugo's foot stepping on her and pinning her down before lifting her. A quick punch to a torso made her vision go blurry. She was turned around to face Izuku in Bakugo's grip. He was standing up with a face she had never seen before. He looked furious, hands squeezing and bending the railing. Even now, Bakugo was just using her to get to Izuku. That's when she heard it, a primal shout that chilled her bones. Bakugo! Screw this. With the last remaining strength left in her body, she swung her head back, colliding with the bridge of Bakugo's nose with satisfying crunch. She fell forward out of the ring and out of bounds. Well, guess she's not going to see Izuku in the finals after all. Making out might still be on the table, though. Her vision started to fade, the blurry sight of Izuku worriedly running towards her the only thing she could see. She was too tired to look around, too tired to keep her eyes opened. She could hear the sounds of Bakugo's pain screams and curses behind her. She hopes he has to get his medal with a crooked nose in front of everyone to see. That'd be fun. Izuku's big arms wrapping around her as he picked her up, carrying her off down the hall. Maybe she could watch the tape that her parents were recording at home. She wouldn't mind watching that prick's nose break a few more times. Last call for Izuku Midoriya. Last call. Standing at his corner, Bakugo let out a mocking scoff, a bandage over his broken nose. Turning to Midnight, he scowled at her before speaking. That fucking coward isn't going to show up. You should just give me my stupid medal, so we could all go home. She did not look amused, huffing at him before turning away. Turning back to the stage, he noticed Deku stomping up the steps. Look who decided to finally have a fucking spine. All right, looks like we're getting a final match after all. The crowd cheered and clapped around them. In this corner, he's the explosive terror. He's a gender-neutral beatdown. Bakugo Katsuki. What a load of shit. All of this hype for a fight that was only going to last seconds. Fucking Deku had never fought back before. This is going to be more like seeing how much Deku could cry than an actual match. And in this corner, he's the gentle giant. He'll break your back with a hug and then apologize for it. Izuku Midoriya. Something was off about him. Deku hasn't said anything yet. He hasn't even looked around. He's just been staring at the ground, his ugly mop of hair covering his face. It's an angry David versus Goliath. Let's get on. Midnight cracked a whip next to them. Okay, I want a nice clean fight, you two. No excessive four. Even now, Deku was looking down at him, not even brave enough to meet his fucking eyes. Who does he think he is? I'm going to be the best hero in the world. Not him. Well, glad you could finally join us, Deku. Good of you to finally find your balls. Nothing. Frowning, he tried again. It would have been better for everyone involved if you just didn't show up. Then no one has to watch you get beat. Still nothing. You know, I don't know why that shark-toothed bitch has her. Raising his foot into the air, Deku slammed it into the ground, a loud crack filling the air. Stumbling a little at the force, he noticed that he wasn't the only one. Deku shook the arena. Suddenly no one was talking. It was almost eerie how silent it was. Raising his head, Bakugo watched as Deku gave him an angry glare. It looked so odd on his face, but he felt a wave of something come over him as Deku shouted, "Start the fucking match." Midnight looked shaken, most likely because she's never seen him like this before. Yet joined the club lady. Slamming his scowl back onto his face, he got into his fighting stance. Finally, now they can all see who was better. Why, yes, of course. Coughing into her hand, she had a blush on her face. Go! Charging off one of his stronger blasts, it flew across the arena before connecting with Deku's big frame, laughing as he fired off two more. When the smoke cleared, Deku was still walking towards him, his lumbering frame intimidating even from so far away. No matter what he shot at him, he just kept stomping over to him. He didn't even fucking flinch. Watching him get closer and closer, he tried to stay in the air, peppering from far, but he kept getting closer. What the hell was this? Where did all of this power come from? He's not an idiot. He knew that if he let Midoriya get close, it was going to be a problem, but he was running out of room. Fine, big guns. Leaping into the air, he started to spin, unleashing his final move. Howitzer impact. A massive explosion rocked the arena, blanketing both of them in red-hot fire. He didn't want to use it, but Midoriya left him no choice. That'll teach him to look down on. A massive arm grabbed him from the smoke, wrenching him from his feet. He was pulled up so they were face to face, Midoriya's furious scowl burning into his eyes. Swinging an arm back, it connected with his face, but he didn't budge. No matter how much he blasted or swung, nothing seemed to work. Midoriya squeezed him, pain rocking through his body. What the fuck? Let go. Don't you ever hurt Setsuna again, or I will personally come back here and break every bone in your body. This wasn't rage that he's known. It wasn't a shouting mother or two kids fighting on a playground. At that moment, Bakugo realized what this was. Cold, calm fury. Struggling against his grip, he growled, biting at his hand. Fuck you. Lifting Bakugo into the air, Midoriya reeled back, and Baseball pitched him out of bounds and down the entrance hallway, colliding with a wall. From the outside, he almost looked like a blonde-haired missile. Silence. The only thing that could be heard was Monoma's crazed laughter in the distance. Midnight stood there stunned before slowly shaking her head and raising her whip. Ah! Bakugo is out of bounds. Midoriya wins. As the crowd went crazy, 1B watched Izuku Midoriya stomp off back towards the infirmary. They all looked at each other and silently agreed to never make Midoriya angry. Blinking her eyes awake, Setsuna Tokage sat up slowly before a big hand held her back down. Don't move just yet. The doctor says to take it slow. Hey, she knows that voice. Looking over, she saw Izuku, sitting in a tiny chair, before looking around. She was in the infirmary, a low, beeping sound filling the room as she noticed that Kendo and Monoma were there as well. Trying to speak, she broke into coughs before clearing her throat and trying again. How long have I been out? They all looked at each other before Kendo spoke. Couple hours. Recovery girl said it's going to take some time for you to fully come back together. Looking down, she noticed that she already started to come back together. Her right arm already back to her elbow. Taking in the rest of her body, she was mostly just a torso right now. One of her legs was back to her knee, but the other was just a stump. Damn, this was going to take a while. Looking back at Izuku, she noticed something shine around his neck. Looking closer, she noticed that it was a gold medal. Squirming a little under her gaze, she connected the pieces together, her eyes shooting open, gesturing at him with her stump in a vain attempt to point. "You beat Bakugo?" A snort from next to her made her turn to see Monoma laughing into his hand. He clearly knew something she didn't. "Please, if you could call that a fight. I've never seen a more one-sided fight in my life." Silently turned to look at Izuku, he was blushing deeply, slowly turned to look away from her, before muttering a little under his breath. "He hurt you?" "Oh!" Setsuna felt a deep blush spread across her face as she wiggled slightly in her bed. "Oh!" She's never had someone fight for her before. Him beating Bakugo for her honestly sounds really hot. "Oh no!" She's never been so red before. Quick say something teasing. That's, cool. Not like that." Now her friends were laughing. "This isn't funny." Her phone rang and she looked over at it, trying to grab it just to realize right. No arms. Watching Izuku pick it up, he answered it before angling it on her shoulder. All of them waving at her as they left her room. "Hey, Mom. Yeah, I'm okay. I was wondering, you wouldn't happen to have recorded the final match?" Izuku Midoriya fell to his knees panting, a stinging pain running through his arms. Looking down at them, he could see faint burns, his hand clenching and unclenching a fist to see if he could even move them. Hearing some laughs, he looks up to see his ex-best friend and his lackeys. They stood over him looking strong and smug, the chubby one with wings talking happily to the one with longer fingers before laughing. He couldn't hear what they were saying because of a ringing in his ears from the explosions, but he knew that whatever it was mocking him. Kakin, on the other hand, was still frowning down at him. His arms were crossed, but he tried to do anything that would mean another explosion in his face. How many times have they done this now? Izuku had seriously lost track. He knew that if he just sat back and did nothing, the beatings would stop, but he couldn't do that. Looking behind, he caught a glimpse of a cowering, smaller boy. Izuku had always been small, but this boy was really small. He had cute little round ears like a mouse and a long, thin tail. Izuku didn't really know him, but he knew he didn't deserve this. "Kakin, please, he mean it. Let's stop this." Shaking his head, Kakin scoffed, a scowl spreading across his face. "That's what I hate about you nerds. You talk about being heroes one day, yet you can't even fucking defend yourself. What? You gonna go crying to mommy every time a villain tries to fight you?" Standing back onto his shaky feet, Izuku frowned back at him. Being hero isn't just about fighting. There are healing heroes and rescue heroes. He could still be a hero. He could... He saw the blow coming but couldn't react in time, air escaping his lungs as he fell backwards, clutching his stomach. "Shut the fuck up. Power is the most important thing about being a hero. Only losers can't fight back. I wouldn't expect anything from you, especially since you're a quirkless DKU. What's this kid going to do? Squeak at me?" That was going to bruise. At least it was on his stomach, so he could easily hide it. Tears prickled his eyes as he let out a cough. Everything hurt. He was burned and beaten. What if he just laid here for a while? It couldn't hurt to just give up. Hearing a scared little squeak from behind him, he shook his head, standing back to his feet again. No, he couldn't just do nothing. The doctor said I have a quirk. It just hasn't shown up yet. Kakin grabbed at his collar, pulling him in close, a growl escaping his lips as he glared at him. "We both know they lied just to save your feelings, but IT doesn't matter. You are weak down to the bone, DKU. You think a quirk is going to fix that?" He couldn't meet Kakin's eyes, only stared at the ground as red-hot tears ran down his face. He was right. He can't even do anything. It wasn't fair. He wanted so badly to be strong like Kakin, to be like All Might. His mom always told him that real strength meant standing up for what's right even if no one else agrees. It was about getting up no matter how many times you were knocked down. But he was so tired. He didn't want to let his mom know what was going on, but everything hurt all the time. Closing his eyes, he tried to stop the tears, but they would not stop coming. As he stood there crying, the laughs around him seemed to get louder and louder, mocking him until they got almost painful, the noise raising until it became static. A low, high-pitched noise taking away all of his other senses, until nothing. When he came, he was panting, his larger form hunched. What happened? He blinked. his gaze looking over large hairy arms. He got his quirk. He finally got his quirk. Excitement filled his racing heart as he gazed back at the little mouse boy behind him. He stared back at him wide-eyed. His body was stiff, but there was something else in his face. Izuku couldn't exactly place it. Looking in front of him, he saw Kakin and his two friends. They were also staring at him wide-eyed with the same look on their faces. Kakin was on the ground, a hand over his chest, and there was blood. Taking a step forward, all three of them stepped away from him. Even Kakin crawled backwards away from him. Looking around, his gaze finally stopped at a broken mirror. It had a big crack going down it, but he could still see what he looked like. He was big, even in a hunched form, with long green hair covering his entire body. Jagged teeth came from a long snout, and he had fingers of long, sharp claws. Blood pooled at his claws, dripping down onto the concrete floor. Staring at his bright yellow piercing eyes, he realized what that look was. Fear. Snapping awake, Izuku panted. His green matted hair covered his face as he frantically looked around the room. Looking over the pretty empty room, his heart finally started to come down. Oh! It was that nightmare again. Collapsing against the bed, he stared at the ceiling fan as it slowly spun in a circle. No matter how many times he had that nightmare, relived that memory, it still bothered him. It had been a long time since then, but it clearly still bothered him, coming back to haunt him every once in a while like a ghost in an old horror story. It wasn't until he heard a knocking at the door and the call of his mother telling him to get up did he finally get out of bed. Pulling off his shirt, he stared down at a handful of burned scars across his body, all of them old and healed over the years. Throwing on his new UA uniform, he sighed, softly muttering, "Please be better than the last school," under his breath as he went out to the living room, backpack in hand. There he is, the man of the hour. Hearing her soft voice before he saw her, he turned to smile at his mom, his fingers absently rubbing at the backpack straps. His mom was a short, rounder woman that was also his rock through all the hard times. She worked herself to the bone as a lawyer when his father left in order to give him a good life. Leaning in, she gave his head a kiss, only chuckling a little at how he squirmed at the affection. "Mom, please. I'm not a little kid anymore. I know, sweetheart, but I can't help but worry. You're growing up so fast on me." Smiling up at him, she slid a little care package of food into his hands before giving his backside a playful smack. "Oh, enough of that. Stop acting like we're never going to see each other again. You can't be late for your first day of UA." Giving a nod, he started to head for the door, only stopping when she called after him. Turning to face her, he was almost knocked over when she ran into him, giving him a give hug, her voice soft and full of love as she whispered to him, "I'm proud of you, my big, strong man." He only cried a little when he hugged her back. The train ride down to UA was fairly normal. Groups of people hugged the train car as they talked amongst themselves. Izuku had always hated crowds. The noise and close proximity only made his anxiety spike. Looking over, he saw some interesting people. A girl with pink skin and black eyes. A guy with a raven for a head. There were so many quirks. Muttering a little to himself as he tried to imagine what kind of quirks they had, he hardly noticed the train lurch to a stop. People heading out the doors and disappearing from sight. Following the crowd, he tried to fight down a blush when he noticed some people looking at him. Some seemed creeped out and others seemed amused, but either way their gazes bothered him, making him scurry off faster. Staring up at the two big buildings, he couldn't help but stare, and it was so big. I mean, sure, he was just here a while back to take the test, but now he was actually going here. Heading up the steps and farther into the schoolyard, he noticed a young woman, most likely his age. She had strawberry blonde hair that went all the way down to her waist and two long pointed horns poking out her head. Were those hoofs on her feet? She seemed stressed out about something, staring up at the map of the school, and then trying to talk to people walking past her before staring up at the map again. As he got closer, he noticed that she was speaking a broken mix of English and Japanese, repeating words and stumbling over herself. He wanted to help, but he also didn't want to spook the girl. Watching her for a second as she muttered to herself, he leaned over to tap her shoulder, making her jump over and turn around to face him. Oh no, she was cute. Hi, do you need help? She seemed relieved for a second before frowning again, her mouth opening and closing a few times before speaking. Oh, yays. I need help with a map. I need to find building no door. She seemed to have fumbled after that, cursing a little to herself. Before she could say anything else, he tilted his head and responded in the best English he knew. W, would it be better if we spoke in English? She practically jumped on top of him, her eyes wide and smiling big at him. You can speak English? She was so close. Trying to fight down his blush, he gave a nod. Yeah, I can speak some English. What can I help you with? Thank goodness. I was standing here forever trying to find out where 1B is. Oh, I know where that is. Follow me and I can walk you there. Heading off into the campus halls, they absently chatted while they walked. Well, she talked. Izuku mostly tried to not freak out that he was having a conversation with a pretty girl. I'm Tsunatori Pony. It's nice to meet you. Wait, no. Sorry, last name first? Pony Tsunatori. That's okay. I'm Izuku Midoriya. First name first. She giggled at that. I take it you're from America, Pony? Yeah. I was born in Texas, and I always want to go to UA since I was little. How do you know English so well, Midoriya? Well, growing up, I always wanted to be a hero like All Might, so I watched all the stuff, even his English work. That's so cool. I also loved All Might growing up. I'm glad someone nice like you made it into the hero course. Since you're in one, and we should have lunch together sometime. Her words stung. Cringing a little, he stopped in his step. There was no way she would know. Don't be too hurt by it. It took her a second to realize that he was no longer leading her as she absently walked ahead, her arms swinging from side to side. Pausing, she turned to see a hurt expression cross Midoriya's face just for a second. He was looking at the floor, absently rubbing his arm before looking up to face her. Sorry, I didn't mean to mislead you. I'm not in the hero course. I was born quirkless. She seemed shocked at that, blinking a few times at him before shaking her head. And no, I didn't mean... Stopping her from continuing, he continued to walk, slapping on the best-faced smile he could before gesturing to the big 1B door next to them. It's okay. I ended up in the support department so I could still make gear for the heroes I love. It was nice talking to you. Bolting down the hall before she could say more, he ran off, leaving her feeling sad and a little ashamed. Her hand was raised up like she was reaching for him before his back disappeared down the hall. Good start to the school year. Kai Chisaki sat in his office, the only sound being the click and clacks of a keyboard and a ticking of a clock on the wall. As he typed away, he absently thought of the boss, the only man to truly care for him, the man who took him in and cared for him when no one else would. His fingers hovered over the keys, pausing for a second as he thought about what he did, what still needs to be done. Phase 2 would soon be upon them. The mask crinkled a little as he frowned before he started to type away again. It had to be done. The boss had started to go soft over the years, started to talk about peace and respect. Chisaki's fingers jammed into the keys harder and faster, his frown spreading. He loved him, but the man was a fool. Money was the most important thing. Power was the most important thing. Not fucking rolling over, and taking it was the most important thing. Yet, why does the look of the old man's face right before he did it keep crossing his mind? His wide-eyed, hurt stare haunting him at night. It was for his own good. He thought of the old man's laugh. It won't be for long. The way he wrapped his arm around his shoulder and called him boy. He'll thank me for this later. The look of worry he used to give him. How he tended to his injuries. How he treated him like family. How he treated them all like family, even those who didn't deserve it. Him telling Chisaki that everything was going to be okay. Each thought made his fingers slam into the keys harder, a growl coming from his lips. It was for his own good. It was for his own good. It was for his own good. It was for... Grabbing onto the keyboard, he stood with a flourish, raising it into the air before slamming it down onto the desk with a crack. Another and another, over and over. Plastic on wood filling the room until the thing in his hand was bent and twisted. Fuck. Suddenly the door swung open with a bang. Chisaki barely even registered that the man entering the room was the one that was supposed to be watching Eri. He was too busy panting and trying to calm his racing heart. Looking up at him with a glare, he growled out, watching the man flinch a little under his gaze. What? Chisaki, sir, there's been a problem. What could possibly be so important? The Maine let out a swallow, a terrified look coming across his face. She's gone, sir. The word slammed into his chest, ripping him from his rage. Standing straight up, he walked around the desk, giving the man his now undivided attention. What? T, the girl, she's disappeared. I went to relieve the last man in charge, and she's gone. Wrenching his hand forward, he took hold of his collar, pulling him in close. His voice filled with a silent fury as he slammed him into the wall. You useless waste of space. Why do I even have you around if you can't even watch one little girl? Fighting against his grip, the man cried out, his legs kicking as he choked out a pitiful plea, trying to beg to spare him of the pain. Why is everyone around him so incompetent? Don't they see his vision? How important this all was. Yes, sir, please. It's not my fault, the pathetic pawn whined. It would be so easy to destroy him right now. But he needed answers. Letting out a huff, he dropped him to the ground, watching him cough and gasp for air. Shaking his head, he started to head back to his desk, the scattered pieces of his keyboard crunching under his feet. Tell Mimic to lock the place down. No one comes in or out until we find her. The man stood back up onto his shaking knees as he tried to regain his voice, letting out a few more coughs before speaking. He can't, sir, he's dead. What? Turning back to look at the Maine, he looked him over like it was a joke. Explain. I don't know what to tell you, sir. He was found chopped in two during the faculty shift. No one even saw or heard anything. Staring at the desk for a second, he leaned down and kicked it over, paper scattering everywhere as he screamed out a furious curse. There was only one person he knew who could operate this cleanly without leaving a single trace. Izuku. The sounds of footsteps splashing through water could be heard as he ran, his movements built to be as quiet as possible. Every once in a while he would stop, hearing someone else walk past before he continued his quiet trek. It wouldn't be long until they noticed that she was gone. He had to move quickly. Stepping out a dark alleyway was Izuku Chisaki. He was dressed in a long, flowing kimono with a katana sheath on his hip. His long, curly, green hair was tied up into a high-tied ponytail. Peeking out, he scanned the alley, waiting to see if he could hear anything. Staring into space for a second, his eyes flashed green, a shift of color moving across his eyes. On his back was a shifting red cloth, wiggling a little before a cute younger girl's head popped out, revealing that Midoriya was carrying her piggyback style. Long silver hair flowed out of its hiding space, and if you looked close you could see that she had a single horn popping out of her forehead. She was known as Eri Chisaki. Her cute face looked around the room, almost imitating Izuku's movements, her cheeks puffed up as she used all of her willpower to focus. Leaning in close to his ear, she whispered, her tone trying to be serious, but still adorable all the same. Okay, looks clear. With a nod, Izuku ran down the alleyway, the light of day peeking from the exit of the alley before overlapping the silhouette of their disappearing frame, making everything go white. Principal Nizu expected many things to happen just months before UA has their yearly heroics test. Reports on Power Loader's newest robots. The final touch-ups on the written parts of the test. But what he did not expect was the sound of a knock at his office door. Looking up at the door, his eyebrows slowly raised, his beady eyes scanning it for a second. Strange. Everyone had gone home for the day? UA's safety system should have made sure that no one leaves or enters UA without his knowing of it. Looking over at his computer, he looked over the cameras. He didn't see any signs of entry or movement. Looking at the camera outside of his door, he paused, his little eyes widening a little before he smiled. It was the kind of smile that terrified the staff and student alike, the kind he only really gave when something or someone surprised him. Reaching his tiny hands toward his phone, he typed out a number belonging to one of the only teachers he knew that would still be up at this hour. The contact to erase her head flashed across the screen for a second before it started to dial. Very interesting indeed. Sitting in the office chair, Izuku Chisaki stared straight ahead, his face unreading and blank. In the corner of his eye, he could see Shota Aizawa A erase her head leaning against the wall. High eyes were trained on him, a frown on his face as he sized him up. Every time he shifted or moved, Eraserhead tensed. It was faint, but he could tell. Eraserhead was on guard, prepared to spring into action at a single notice. A fight Izuku would like to avoid if he was honest. Looking back at him, Izuku's hand absently traced his katana, refusing to back down from his challenging gaze. He didn't even flinch when Nizu's furry body hopped onto his desk, meeting his gaze with a big smile. Why is everyone so tense? How about some tea? I always feel like it eases a harsh situation. They nodded and Nizu scampered off, turning his back to Izuku as he rummaged for some cups. Bad move. Leaving himself wide open like that is just begging for trouble. Looking at Eraserhead, their eyes met, almost begging him to try something before he looked back at Nizu's frame, just in time for a cup to be placed before him. Reaching forward, he grabbed at the cup, looking down at it for a second. The brown liquid swished a little as he scanned it, his eyes flashing green, before nodding and taking a sip. He didn't acknowledge the looks they gave. Eraserhead looked about, reading to pounce on him, and Principal Nizu looked fascinated. Placing his furry hands together, Principal Nizu smiled wide as he spoke, his voice full of mirth. So tell me, I must know, what brings an infamous assassin carrying a little girl at my door at this hour? The suspense is killing me. The air's temperature almost seemed to get colder, like acknowledging what he had completely changed the tone of the room. Principal Nizu still seemed fascinated, but there was an edge of danger in his voice, while Eraserhead looked more surprised than anything, like he didn't expect Nizu to just up and say it. Thinking for a second, he spoke in neutral tone. You know who I am? I do. Well, mostly. A deadly assassin known as Oracle, or sometimes called a Green Raven. You have a long list of kills, but I must admit I didn't expect you to be so young. Why you could practically be confused for one of my first-year students. I have so many questions on my mind that I'd like to ask you, but I first must ask how you got in here. UA is known for having one of the finest securities in the world. Not exactly where someone can just stroll into. The way your security system is designed has a flaw in it. It's built to have its system reset and all the code randomized to avoid hacking. But every time it does reset, there's an opening in security that allows someone to slip in. The opening is there only for a minute tops, but you can slip in if you know when it is. A pause as he took a sip of his drink, Nizu staring at him with his eyebrows raising slowly. He was looking him over for any sign of deceit before laughing. Well, that's certainly a surprise. Guess I should talk to Power Loader and see if we can't get that fixed. Walking over, he took a seat back into his chair, leaning in on his elbows. Now that is taken out of the way, to what do I owe the pleasure, Mr. Oracle? Izuku Chisaki seemed to think for a second, weighing his options before speaking. I was abandoned at a young age. My mother did not want me when it was believed that I was quirkless. I would have died had I not been taken in by the leader of the Yakuza. The boss cared for me and treated me like his own, despite everything. I was put into work by another person taken in by the boss, a man known as Kai Chisaki. For whatever reason, Kai always hated me. He would send me on assassination jobs he believed was impossible for me to do, most likely to snuff me out, but he failed. I thrived in my new profession and became what you know me as today. Then a couple years ago, Eri joined us. She has a powerful quirk that when it activated for the first time, it killed her father, her mother abandoning her on our doorstep not long after. Nizu seemed to hum in thought, not risking saying anything while Eraserhead only got more quiet. Over time, Eri had taken a liking to me, and so the boss put me in charge of her protection. I think he secretly wanted me out of this life. A while ago, the boss had come under an illness and gone into a coma, putting Kai in charge of everything. Kai hated me before, but now he did it openly. He tried to put the protection of Eri into someone else's hands, and had started to look at Eri with a concerning look. Giving a nod, Nizu seemed to put the rest together, taking a sip of his own cup before speaking. So you saw the writing on the wall, and escaped with Eri bringing her here. A nod was all Nizu got in response. Interesting. Simply interesting. But I must ask, why bring her here? Surely there are other places to take her. As you have said before, I am infamous. Over the years, I have killed heroes and villains, alike leaving me with not many options. Most people I know I can trust is in the Yakuza, and those may be compromised due to Kai's reach. I can go to the police, but again, there are too many unknowns. My quirk told me that the best option was you, Principal Nizu. Nizu perked a little in his seat, his ears going straight up for a second as his smile got wider. Really now? Do tell. Over the years, you have shown a history of going against the grain of hero society, fighting for not only your rights as a hero, but for other mutant types as well. You are not afraid to fight for what you believe in, and honestly, I believe a part of you just really enjoys stirring the pot. I believe you will help us. Nizu sat there for a second in thought, his face pointed down at the desk before he could hear a faint chuckle, the chuckling growing louder until it turned into a mad cackling. His eyes wide and manic as he slammed a furry paw down onto the desk, making Erasure head shiver at the sight. Principal Nizu sitting back with a happy sigh. Oh, Mr. Oracle, you are too much. I think I quite like you. Staring up at the ceiling, he rolled his head a little, calculating what next to ask in his head. Izuku could practically see the numbers like Nizu was thinking about the next move in a game of chess. Now that you brought up, I must know what your quirk is. People online seem to believe you can see the future based on how not a single trace of you has been seen, but I believe it's something else. I would love to know. When all he got was a harsh glare and silence, Nizu let out a laugh, leaning in slowly to study him. Come now, Mr. Oracle. I thought you came to us to be allies? How are we to protect little Eri, if you want to confide in us? Sighing, he closed his eyes. He was right. There was no point keeping secrets if he wanted them to trust each other. That doesn't mean he has to like it, though. No, my quirk doesn't let me see into the future. My quirk is a lot like your own Principal Nizu, an intelligence quirk. Unlike yours, however, it doesn't make me smarter. It merely shows me potential outcomes based off what I know. When I had assassination jobs in the past, the most effective way was to know as much as possible. Quirks, locations, building schematics. The more knowledge meant the cleaner a run. If I don't know something, it leaves a blank spot in my visions I call an unknown. Unknowns are unpredictable, potentially dangerous, and should be avoided at all costs. Erasure head stared wide at the younger boy, his gaze shifting from a very happy Nizu back to him again. That sounded extremely dangerous. The ability to read him like an open book based on previous fights and personality. Even if the quirk doesn't help him physically. Aizawa absently wondered what it would be like to teach such a child. Opening his mouth to ask something, he was interrupted over Principal Nizu, shouting out the next question before he could say anything. Fascinating, Mr. Oracle. Simply fascinating. With a quirk like that, your skill ceiling could be potentially endless. I can think of so many ways you could do good in the world. That being said, you don't seem the type. So my last question is this. Why are you doing all of this? Just to save a single girl? For self-preservation? Erasure head watched as the boy seemed to think, taking a sip of his tea. But when he opened his mouth, it wasn't an answer he expected. I do not know why. My love for the world has died the day I was abandoned. In all intended purposes, it does not make sense. What I do know, however, is that Eri is too good for this world. I have watched her come out of her shell and bloom in a place she should have never been in the first place. Maybe she represents an innocence I lost, or perhaps I've come to love her like a brother. As he spoke, Aizawa felt a wave of killing intent from the boy, his body growing tense as he stood up, his gaze burning into Principal Nizu. Keep this in mind. If anything would happen to her, I will burn this world to the ground. Turning around, he stomped out the door. Opening it to find Eri listening in, a startled yell could be heard as they both disappeared from sight. To say Shota Aizawa was surprised was an understatement. Something about hearing a young adult talk with such a cold nature really shook him. He was an underground hero. He knew that the world was cruel. Flash floods, drug peddling, petty crime, human trafficking, he's seen it all. Yet for whatever reason, the cold, calculating-looking Oracle's eyes bothered him the most. He stood there staring at the closed door with knitted eyebrows before turning when he heard a snicker. Nizu was fucking laughing. Watching the rodent pour tea down his throat made him tense. You aren't seriously considering helping them, are you? And what if I am? Looking back at the door, he let out a sigh, running a hand through his long black hair. That kid is nothing but a ticking time bomb. You heard him. He only cares about that little girl. His boss hummed, turning back to his computer. slowly typing away before smirking a little in thought. Then I suppose we should make sure nothing happens to little Aries, shouldn't we? Silence except the sound of typing, before another pause. While we're at it, might as well turn Mr. Oracle into a proper hero. After all, we do teach a school for hero hopefuls, don't we? I welcome the challenge. Standing in a crowd of people, Izuku Chisaki wandered towards the front of the gates, a painted line on the ground telling him not to walk closer. The sound of idle chatter and bragging could be heard in the air, his hands fiddling with his katana sheath before pulling it off and kneeling onto the ground. Destroying robots. A test that benefits those born with more physically impressive and flashy quirks, but test that's not impossible. Closing his eyes, he activated his quirk, his mouth moving at a heightened speed as he mapped out his route. Judging from the pictures provided, the robots were most likely weak in the joints and necks. They wouldn't put unstoppable robots in a test for college students. They most likely were designed in a way to be destroyed by hand, or built with weaker metals. Judging from the size of the walls and the time it took to get here, the environment was most likely a buildingscape, something to replicate the most common location for fights in hero society. The best bet would be to hit them hard and fast. He doesn't have to beat the other contestants, simply be faster than them. That was something he could do, and he excelled in dark alleyways. The unknown of the zero-pointer was concerning, but it was surely built as a distraction, a way to keep those competing from scoring as much as they should. Opening his eyes, a green flash sparked across his eyes. Got it. Movement to his left made him turn his head. A girl about his age waving a hand across his face. Long blue hair and a big smile on her face. She was just looking at him with such a big smile, she absently made him think of Eri. Hey, are you okay? You've been sitting here for a while and talking super fast? Not that there's anything wrong with that. I do it all the time. Wow, your hair sure is green. It's so fluffy, I just want to touch it, but that'd be rude. Are you aware everyone is staring at you like you're a crazy person? Not in a R-E-R-E kind of way, but in a so kind of way yak now. Blinking a few times, he couldn't help but stare. That was a lot to say in so little time. Reaching down to grab his blade, he got back up, slowly patting himself off. I'm fine. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Before he could respond to the crazy woman, another crazy person came out of the crowd. What was it with this place and having so many crazy people? Stomping over to him, the blue-haired man waved his stiff arm to and fro. His voice was loud and grating. You there, who told you you were allowed to bring a dangerous weapon onto property? He bellowed, practically fogging his glasses with indignation as he reached for his blade. Izuku immediately wrenched out the stranger's hands, shooting him with a death glare that made him flinch away. The man was glaring at him, but he showed no sign of reaching for him again. Closing his eyes, Izuku gave a tired sigh before fashioning the blade back onto his hip. The test allows for participants to bring register equipment to help with people not born with physically powerful quirks. This is allowed. Turning away from the man, he faced forward again, tuning out anything else the man said as he refocused again, unaware of anything either of them were saying. This was not the time for something so petty. He intended to win. UA would only put them under protection if he got in. All right, everyone, let's get it on. A pause as everyone looked at each other. That means go. There are no countdowns in real life. Jumping a little in place when Nijire and Ida faced forward again, they noticed a green-haired man already sprinting fair ahead and into the testing grounds. All Nijire could do was stare as he sprinted off, her eyes wide as she shouted out, "He's so fast." Running down an alleyway, he spun, slicing along the robot's tires before wiping around and taking off his head, not even bothering to look at it before he continued his assault. That was 30 points, he counted aloud, dashing past some other distracted contestants and removing the robots he knew they could not. He could hardly beat any of them if it was just about physical power, especially since he was more or less fighting quirkless. But he had the training, the speed, and the ability to gauge situation in an instant, leaping into the air that brought the blade down, bisecting a three-pointer's head in half before pulling the blade free. He was unaware that he was being recorded, the video of his actions playing over screens with many eyes watching him. He's pretty impressive if I do say so myself, cackled Principal Nizu, his gaze flickering to other contestants before back to Izuku's screen. I was unsure how he would fare against non-human opponents. The tall, skinny blonde man stared for a second before letting out a hearty chuckle, patting his lip with a handkerchief. Yes, the boy's movements are very fluid. Where did you say you found him, Principal Nizu? Oh, he's just a stray I took a while back. He may come off crass, but I see a good head on his shoulders. Grumbling, the cowboy watched the green-haired boy as well, watch him destroy another three-pointer before dashing down an alleyway. He would make a good stealth hero if he wasn't so ruthless. That's the 5th kill hit I've counted. The boy seems to show no remorse at all. With a blade like that, he could do some serious damage to a person. Snickering Midnight let out a laugh, patting him on the shoulders. Says the hero that mainly uses a gun. Crossing his arms, Vlad King blew out some hot air before speaking up. I agree with Snipe. We teach students to be heroes, not trained soldiers. I've yet to see him even try to help a single contestant. Listening to them all talk amongst themselves, Nizu continued to smile at the screen. I'm sure he just needs a little persuading. Reaching forward, his little pay pressed at a big button. The ground shook, chunks of rock coming down around him as he came out of his hiding spot. This was not predicted. Turning a corner, he watched a giant robot emerge in the ground, its massive lumbering frame clambering forward and destroying all in its wake. Ah, the 0-pointer. He seemed to have miscalculated how crazy the rat truly was. This was much more than a distraction. Frowning, he watched it for a second before sighing, his eyes flashing green as he corrected his quirk. No matter, the thing was too slow to catch him. All he had to do was move location and continue picking off stragglers. Anyone who got caught by that thing didn't deserve to be here. The thing was a slow-moving tank, nothing more. Turning to leave, he heard a yelp, his gaze tracking on a brunette woman trapped under rubble. Well, that was unfortunate, but also none of his concern. Watching her struggle under the rock as the robot got closer, he wondered if UA would actually kill someone trying to go to their school. They did sign waivers, after all. Before he could continue, that thought the blue-haired woman from before flew in from a rooftop, her hands glowing as she moved the rock off of the other woman. What a waste of time. Using so much effort for another person. Pulling the woman free, they both started to get out of the way of the robot. A loud shake made a chunk of the roof start to fall, heading for the both of them. He was unsure why he did what he did. This was not the optimal route. This path was not the one that led to the most points, or even the one that was the safest. It was full of unknowns and blank spots. Potential dangers just hiding in spaces that he did not know and could not predict. Maybe it was how scared the brunette looked, or maybe it was the look in the blue-haired woman's eyes. The way her eyes sparkled as she struggled to pull another contestant away. It was at that moment that she reminded him of Eri, so happy and full of life. Running forward, he yanked the both of them away from the chunk of falling rubble, his arms slinging under the brunette's other side as they pulled her to safety. When the alarm came, they all sat far away from the danger, panting, the large lumbering silhouette of the turned-off 0-pointer in the distance. Robots ran to and fro, helping any who were injured as a surly old woman healed those she could. His eyes scanned the carnage. No one seemed too hurt. Most of it looked like sprains and things that could be shaken off with some good sleep. He knew UA didn't have it in them to kill. The sound of a clearing throat snapped him out of his thought. The brunette woman trying to get both of their attention. At a closer look, he noticed that she had round pink marks on her cheeks. She smiled wide at them, speaking of words of happiness. Frowning, he didn't like how they made him feel. She should not be so nice. Everyone is out to get something and nothing is free, he told himself. Kind words were rarely spoken out of pure kindness. Raising a hand, he stopped her, shaking his head as he started to walk away. Think nothing of it. Next time, think before being a liability. The two watched him walk off, staring at him as he headed for the exit. Ochako watched, her mouth hanging open with shock before huffing and crossing her arms. Geez, what a jerk. As he started to disappear from sight, Nijire couldn't take her eyes off of him, a frown tugging at her lip. I don't know. He just seems really sad to me. Kyokajiro's parents always told her that if you love your work, you didn't work a day in your life. She understood to an extent what they meant. Having a teacher speak openly about their passion got her through one of her hardest subjects, math. There was just something about how a person's eyes light up when they speak that makes you want to feel that way as well. She'll always be grateful to Mr. Hero for helping her pass high school. In comparison, a teacher who's only there for the paycheck comes off boring and exhausting. But at the end of the day, it was still a job, right? You can only work so long until you get burnt out from it. That's probably the reason why she never thought about doing music for a living like her parents. Don't get her wrong, she loves music. There are days where her parents would joke and say she listens to music as easy as she breathes. Yet she always kept it secret. From her friends, from the people in her life. It always came off embarrassing or like braggy, you know? The first time she saw him, she was jogging along the pier. She made a mission to get into UA, and that meant getting into shape. There was no way that the most popular hero college in the country was just gone to let anyone in. She ran herself to the bone some nights, honing her body to be as fit as she could. It was on one night that she heard it. She was finishing up her run when she heard the most beautiful song she's ever heard. She's unsure how to describe it. The song was beautiful, with happy notes and a beat that made her turn towards it. It felt so sad, though, like the notes were used in a way to hide a great sadness. As she wandered through the pier, she found a boy playing a flute. He didn't come off as anything special. He was kind of on the plain side, if she was honest. He wore baggy clothes and headphones over his ears. He was short, not shorter than her, but for sure more on the short side with a lean frame. He had a poof of purple hair on his head with lighter streaks, going through it, poking out of the headphones, and a light speckle of freckles. He was just standing there, playing his beautifully sad song as people walked past. Some of the people tossed cheap change into a tip jar that was his flute case as they wandered past him. But judging from the amount in the case, he looked mostly ignored. Something about that really irked her. He was playing his heart out for the world to see, and yet the world did not seem to care. She stood for longer than she should have watching him play. He looked almost lost to the world. She only really snapped out of it when he stopped playing and started to pack up. Shaking her head, she smacked at her cheeks as she turned and started back onto her run. What the hell was that? She had made it a goal to run past that spot every time she went on a run to hear him play. Every time he played a different song, but no matter how upbeat or different it was, she could hear a hint of sadness in the notes. It was after the 5th or 6th time that she decided she wanted to meet him, but she was unsure on how to do it. It would be really weird to just walk up to him and go, "Hey, I don't know if you know me, but I'm that weird girl that keeps staring at you every day that you play. I swear I'm completely normal and not a stalker." So one day she did something that honestly might have been more embarrassing. She pulled her favorite violin from her room, walked down to meet him at the pier, sat down near him, and started to play as well. He was playing a song she was familiar with, so she kind of just joined in. She plucked away at her violin, playing out the beginning strings. His bright green eyes were on her as she played. He looked confused for a second before smiling, letting out a small chuckle before starting on his part. Hyokujiro had always hated playing with other people before. She had never found someone that she jived with. It had always felt like a competition, like they were trying to outdo each other. This felt different, though, less like a battle of egos and more like a dance. She played some, he played some, they played together. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. She was unsure how long they sat like that. Song bled into song. When she finally snapped out that the sun had set, and the pier was mostly empty. Looking over to him, he seemed just as surprised, his eyes looking over the empty pier before looking back at her. He stared at her before letting out a laugh and a smile, turned to pack up his stuff. Her face was so red as she turned to do the same. What the hell was that? He definitely thought she was weird or something, who just barges in and invades someone's jam sesh like that. Her mind was racing as she put her violin away. She just wanted to be part of the beautiful song. She didn't even think about how weird it looked from the outside. Jumping a little, she felt her shoulder tapped, whipping around to stare at him. "It was nice playing with you. Here's your cut." His hand was held out to her with a nice chunk of change. "Oh!" He thought she wanted it on the money. Shaking her head, she placed her hand on his and gently pushed it away. "Keep it. I don't really want the money." His eyebrows rose at that, looking her over again with a skeptical look. Well, now I feel bad. You have to want something? You can tell me your name. Her mouth snapped shut as soon as the words left her mouth. She could feel a blush spreading across her face. Where the hell did that come from? She watched mortified as his eyes snapped wide, his face turning just as red before letting out a full laugh. She liked his laugh. It sounded nice. Dang, that was smooth. I'm suffering whiplash from how quick that was. He laughed as he rubbed his neck before smiling at her. Sure, I'll tell you my name only if I get yours in return. A giggle bubbled up from her throat, which immediately made her cringe. She was not some giggling schoolgirl. What the hell was going on with her? Before she could respond, she watched the mysterious boy get pulled into the air by a kid from behind. He had jagged, sharp teeth and spiky black hair. There you are, you fucking villain. He bellowed, pulling her new jam buddy by the collar of his shirt and off of his feet. Another one came up from her side, his long fingers stretching to get between him and her. He had a smarmy look on his face and long, straight brown hair. Even the sound of his voice made her want to punch him. We've been looking all over for you. Just wait until Bakugo hears about your little hiding place. He bellowed. Her new purple-haired friend squirmed a little in the grip before sighing. If it isn't Thing 1 and Thing 2, I'm surprised you guys took your time to pull your heads out of Kakin's ass long enough to find me. Shut up. Right. So her new friend was only making things worse. Running a hand down along her face, she sighed before trying to get between them, only to be stopped by the finger asshole. His eyes looked her over with a pervy gaze that made her cringe before leaning against the wall, a hand slicking his greasy hair back. The asshole was trying to pick her up right now? Seriously? Getting into a fighting stance, her earphone jacks hovered in the air like snakes posing to strike, her fist clenched in front of her face. Let him go. Before she could tear this guy a new asshole, she watched her jam buddy twist himself free from the shark mouth guy's grip, spin around, and crack his flute case over the pervert's head. Come on, guys. Go be weird perverts on your own time. I don't have all day. The pervert spun around, clutching his head and cursing. Looking her way, the mysterious flute player gave her a wink, a little salute, and then he flipped backwards onto a roof and ran off. All she could do was stare confused as the two guys cursed at each other, pointing after him. Them running off after him, screaming the whole way, completely ignoring her. Huh? The guy had a jumping quirk. She didn't get to see him after that. Every time she jogged past, she hoped to hear him play, but he wasn't there. He must have moved to a different location after those two found him. It really put a damper on her whole mood. She got so used to hearing him play every day that it was weird to not hear it. She might have worried her parent a little with how she moped around for a few days after that. Staring at an old worn-out poster of Present Mix radio show, she sighed. She couldn't mope around forever. She still had to train for UA. The next time she saw him was at the UA test, funny enough. The auditorium she was ushered into was massive. It had rows upon rows of seats, and more than half of the seats were already taken. Looking over the vast amount of people, she saw his purple tuft of hair poking out of headphones across the way, making her heart skip a beat. So he was a hero hopeful as well? He didn't seem to be talking to anyone, just facing forward and writing something in a notebook next to a very angry-looking blonde. Silently hoping he got in her thoughts, were interrupted with a loud shout, her hands going to clasp at her ears. All right, everybody. It's time for the live performance part of the test. Spotlights flicked on, and standing in front of them was Present Mike, the voice hero. Leaning on her arm, her smirk become more of a genuine smile, watching Present Mike do his stick. It would be embarrassing to admit out loud, but she used to love Present Mike when she was little. Watching a hero save people and play music was more inspiring than she'd like to admit. She couldn't tell you the amount of times her and her family sang the songs playing over Present Mix Radio Bonanza while they were on road trips. Nowadays, she saw him more as an equally embarrassing second dad, someone you love in secret, but never actually tell them for fear of their head growing too big. All right, little listeners, listen up, 'cause I'm only going to tell you once. The physical part of the test is going to be held in a suburban artificial setting about a 30-minute drive from here. You'll have roughly 10 minutes to rack up as much points as you can. The monitor behind him flickered to life, showing shots of the environment they were supposed to participate in, followed by a chart of different robots. There are 3 types of robots that will have a number written on them. Each number is the amount of points they are worth. You'll need to destroy as many as you can within the 10-minute time frame. You dig? Just remember, villainous acts such as attacking your fellow examinees or sabotage will get you disqualified. Nodding along, she looked around the room. Makes sense. This is a hero school after all. I have a question. Standing up from his seat, a blue-haired man with glasses raised his arms straight up. His stiffness made her think of a robot man. Yo, we got a caller. What's your question, little listener? Raising the piece of paper they were given, he waved it back and forth as he spoke, loudly, practically shouting loud enough for the whole world to hear. On the printout, there are 4 robots written down, not 3. If this is a typo, this is very unprofessional of a prestige university, such as UA, and a slander against the reputation of this fine establishment. Looking down at her own paper, she raised an eyebrow. Sure enough, there was a 4th robot. It didn't look like a typo, though. She's sure he just hadn't brought it up yet. Looking up just in time, she watched the robot man gesture his arm to her jam buddy, loudly shouting at him. Also, you there. Take those headphones off. Headphones are against UA policy. Looking back and forth between the two, a frown lightly tugged at her lip. That was a little uncalled for, calling him out like that. The purple-haired teen turned and looked at the robot man with a confused look. Raising his eyebrows a little, he tilted his head before signing something to him with his hand. Her sign language was a little rusty, but it looked like he was asking a confused question. The auditorium was quiet for a split second before bursting into laughter. The robot man's face turned bright red before bending at a 90-degree angle, screaming apologies. Letting out a laugh, she shook her head before leaning back in her seat. Examinee 7111, please do not harass fellow contestants. I must remind everyone that we are all inclusive at UA. Shaking his head, she could see amusement on President Mick's face. As for the 4th robot, good catch. Yes, there is a mystery 4th robot. It's not worth any points, though. It's more there to stir the pot, so to speak. I'd suggest not fighting it unless you really have to. People muttered excitedly around her, and she found herself getting hyped as well. This is it, what she's trained for. That's all, little listeners. Please leave in an orderly fashion and meet at your designated points. Don't forget to have a good time. Let's hear the university's motto as a special little period on this presentation. Standing up, she smiled as she raised her fist in the air along with the rest of the auditorium. Plus ultra, let's do this. After all, how bad could it be? Bad. It could be very bad. The ground shook as she ran, chunks of rock falling around her. What kind of test was this? Who the hell puts a massive robot in the middle of a test? Stir the pot, my ass. Steeping aside, she watched a chunk of rock fall next to her. She was doing so well, too, with a nice 32 points under her belt, until the test decided to become bullshit. People panicked and ran all around her. How could everything go tits up so fast? Hearing a yelp, she looked behind her, a brunette woman pinned under a chunk of rubble. Oh, great. Watching her struggle under the rock, she sighed before making a mad dash for her. This was so stupid. Surely UA wasn't actually going to kill this girl. Reaching her hands under the rock, she gritted her teeth as she tried to lift it, her arms bulging under the weight. No good. She mostly trained to be quick, not strong. As the robot got closer and closer, she panted, her heart racing. Looking up at the blue sky, she racked her brain, thinking of what to do. Common girl, think of something. Movement in the corner of her, I made her turn. It was her jam buddy. He was hopping from rooftop to rooftop before making a running leap at the massive robot. She watched with wide eyes as he bounced off nothing, tucking and rolling before leaping again. Kyokujiro once saw a video on the internet about a group of teens jumping from building to building without using their quirks. It was honestly crazy to see what a person could do without their powers, the physical prowess of people when they adapt. This was like that. His lean frame hopped and flipped all over the place, only he wasn't touching the ground. He was bouncing and running on air. Doing a flip, she watched him dive boots first right to the glass eye of the robot, the massive frame shaking a little from the force. Shaking her head from the shock, she took a deep breath, letting out a low hum. Building reverb, she started to get louder, her jacks vibrating faster and faster until it started to get unbearable. Reeling them back, she jammed them both into the rock, expelling the force and causing the chunk of roof to burst apart. With a shaky breath, she leaned down to help the brunette girl up, helping her onto her feet before pulling her away. As they walked together, Kyoka holding her off her messed-up leg. She watched the brunette girl look behind them, a look of awe in her eyes. Do you think he's okay? The massive lumbering robot teetered behind them as they walked, slowly leaning back before falling over. Yeah, I'm sure he's fine. The next time she saw him after that was in the dorms. He seemed to be up and about as she lifted her stuff up into her new dorm room, but they didn't talk. The only sign that he recognized her was when their eyes met and his widened a little, a happy smile pulling at his lip. She didn't dwell on how that made her feel. Instead, she focused on meeting everyone that she was going to live with for the next 4 years. Not that she really had a choice in the matter, because she found herself being pulled out of her room by a bunch of the girls and sat down in a circle across from the boys. They gathered most of the 1A class together in a circle and were doing introductions one at a time. The girls seemed nice. There was Urarka, i.e. Rubble Girl. She didn't seem like the nickname, but it was that or Pukey, an invisible girl named Hagakure, or, as she lovingly put into her phone, Holly, a pink-skinned girl named Mina, who kept insisting she be called Mama. Tsu, a froggy girl that just wanted to be called Tsu, 'cause that's what friends call her. It only made her a little happy that she already has so many cool girlfriends. And last but not least, Momo, a very curvy girl that she started to call Yamamo. Out of all of the girls, Yamamo was already her favorite. She was so soft-spoken and refined. Talking to her made her think of the movie Pride and Prejudice that her mother used to watch all the time, except without any of the snobbish stuff. Also, she was hot, which was a bonus in her eyes. Not that the others weren't smoking in their own right, but Yamamo was for sure on top. Snapping out of her by thoughts, she listened to the boys introduce themselves now. They were nice enough. None of them seemed like too big a pervert. Well, besides a little purple baby. It really says something about a person that you just met them and you already want to punch them in their stupid face. Then they finally got to her mysterious musician friend. He was sitting across the way from her with headphones and a lazy smile on his face. Honestly, he looked just as thrilled to be there as she was. Sitting up some, he gave them all a smile and wave before speaking. Hey everyone, name's Izuku Tsutsumi. I like learning about quirks and playing the flute. My quirk is Air Platform. It allows me to turn the air into thin invisible barriers. She watched namely Momo and Urarka perk up a little at that, smiling more genuinely at him when he mentioned playing the violin. Looks like she's not the only one who's a fan. Across the way, Ida stared wide-eyed at him, his mouth opening and closing a few times like an exasperated fish before frowning at him. Opening his mouth, he went to say something only to be interrupted by Urarka. That sounded like a really powerful quirk. People nodded around her, making Tsutsumi let out a nervous laugh rubbing at his neck. Yeah, it can be pretty versatile, but the barriers are pretty thin and can be broken super easily. You can break one just by punching it. I mostly use them for movement. Momo nodded at that. Still sounds quite useful. Urarka already mentioned what you did at the test, and I must say I'm quite impressed. Not only that, but I adore flute music. I would love to hear you play Samedi. Standing up abruptly, Ida shouted, gesturing at him with both of his arms. You can talk. Tsutsumi looked confused for a second before letting out a laugh, running a hand through his curly hair. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean to embarrass you in front of all of those people, Ida. Gesturing to the headphones resting on his ears, he sighed. An accident happened to me when I was younger, so now I have a constant ringing in my ears. The support companies built these, so I can still hear, and to stop me from hurting my eardrums further. It was kind of a long story to shout over the auditorium, so I played dumb. It didn't look like that completely quelled Ida's rage, but it for sure placated it for now. He sat down with a huff, his face slightly red. The conversation continued on from there, but she could feel a pair of heterochromatic eyes glaring at Tsutsumi from across the room. The clock ticking on the wall felt like nails in a coffin. each tick hammering down hard into the class of 1A's moral. No one bothered to say anything as they all hyped themselves up for the big event. The tension was so thick, you could practically cut it with a knife. The UA Sports Festival was upon them. She and everyone else had spent months training and preparing. It's crazy to think it's only been a few months since she joined Class 1A. There was the first day of class where the purple pervert got expelled for grabbing Yamamo's ass, and the USJ where the League of Villains invaded trying to kill All Might. Looking over at Tsutsumi, she noticed that he was unusually quiet, staring at the ticking clock as time counted down, his foot moving up and down in a jittery fashion. She knew that he had to do the opening speech this year, but she didn't expect him to have this response. Sure, he had moments of anxiety, but he usually came off confident and self-assured. Leaning over, she punts his shoulder playfully. Don't go peeing yourself right before the big event. Looking back at her, he gave her a relieved smirk back before speaking. Yeah, you wish. Sorry, I'm just a little nervous with what I need to do. His wording was weird. What he needs to do. Hey, don't worry. No matter what happens, I have your back. Giving her a genuine smile, he nodded. Staring into his bright green eyes, she started to think about how close they were getting. Playing music together and cracking jokes. He slowly started to worm his way into her heart, pulling her out of her weird music funk and helping her with her anxieties about playing in front of people. She honestly wasn't sure what she would do without him. She was still unsure where they stood right now or what she felt for him. When this is all over, she made a mental note to ask him about it. She was so lost in thought, she didn't even notice Todoroki approaching them until he was upon them, his voice cold and stoic. Tsutsumi, it's been bothering me for the longest time. I've been trying to find out if you were a legacy child. That got everyone's attention, all eyes on them as Todoroki spoke. It's obvious with how well you use your quirk that you were trained just like Ida or I. I can't seem to place who they are, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I'm going to crush you. This is my declaration of war. Izuku Tsutsumi stared at the floor in thought before meeting Todoroki's gaze with scoff. For the first time ever, he looked furious, his gaze making her stare with widened eyes. Even Todoroki seemed a little put off by how he looked. Izuku stood up and rolled his shoulders, his gaze hardened with spite. We all have our reasons for being here, Todoroki. I don't know nor do I care about your family drama. Looking over the room, everyone stared at him in awe, his gaze drifting over the room before landing on Bakugo. If you all want to fight over each other like crabs, in a bucket be my guess. Turning, he started to head for the door, the bell ringing telling them it's their turn to walk out. With a look over his shoulder, he met Todoroki's gaze one last time before rolling his eyes and walking out of the room. I have something more important to do. Squinting against the blinding light, she, along with the rest of class, walked out into the stadium. A massive cacophony of screams and shouts made her ears ring as voice bled into voice, leaving them with a single monstrous sound. Following the backs of Izuku and some of the rest of their class, she wandered out of the tunnel and onto the field. The stadium was filled with thousands of spectators. Their gazes bore into all of them like a spotlight. She wasn't even sure where to look. There were so many people. Not a single empty seat in the house, huh? Might as well be a concert. A very big concert. Uraraka muttered out a wow next to her. Let's give it up for Class 1A. Present Mix's voice echoed over the speakers as they made their way to the raised stage designated for them. All right, now let's give it up for Class 1B and General Ed. Oof! Pairing 1B and General Education together wasn't exactly fair. No wonder everyone at UA seems to have it out for them. Turning, she watched hordes of other students walk out into field. The amount of students not in 1A or 1B was at least 5 to 1. She had no idea there would be so many of them. Looking over the unknown faces, she stopped a second at that one tired-looking guy who said he was going to replace one of them a couple days ago. He was facing straight ahead, not talking to anyone, his face completely unreadable. Weird. Soon everyone had gathered together in the middle, ready to begin the games. Introducing today's referee. It's the R-rated heroine, Midnight. Walking onto the stage, their art teacher, Midnight, was completely dressed in her revealing hero costume. Raising her whip into the air, she brought it down with a crack. All right, everyone. I expect all of you to be good little boys and girls. Turning, she struck a pose, licking her lips seductively. Or be punished. The audience went crazy around them, her hungry gaze looking over the entire class before straightening herself out. But first, let's hear some words from a freshman representative. He placed first in the entrance exam with a total 81 points. Izuku Tsutsumi. Walking through the crowd of people, she watched as Izuku made his way to the stage. He had a determined, deathly serious look in his eyes as he walked. His shoulders were straight as he marched. Even from here, she could feel everyone's gaze on him, watching and judging him as he made the long trek up the steps. Taking the mic from Midnight, she whispered some words of encouragement to him before stepping back to give him the stage. Unlike backstage, he didn't seem to show a single sign of being nervous, his movements showing a sign of confidence. He took a deep breath, ignoring the harsh stares. The whole world was watching him now, waiting to see what he'd say. Time to make a statement. My name is Izuku Tsutsumi. You may not know the name Tsutsumi, but there's another name you may know. Lady Nagant. The crowd was full of whispers at that, all of them caught off guard with what was happening. Lady Nagant is my mother. When she was younger, my mother was taken in by the HBSC. She was groomed by them, trained to be an assassin, and kill for them. She fought and killed all that she was asked while being whispered false promises and lies. She killed until the pile of bodies got too big, and she cracked under the guilt and pressure. When their toy was broken, the HSBC made her look like a villain, faked her death, and locked her away in Tartarus. As Izuku's voice echoed to the speakers, everyone watched in rapt attention, his speech being shown to the entire world. Taking a deep breath, Izuku gripped his mic tighter. My mother was the kindest and most optimistic hero I have ever known. She was my hero, and now she's gone. You all don't deserve her. So instead, you have to deal with me. Looking at a camera, Izuku's burning eyes glared out into the world, hundreds of thousands of people staring back. I don't know who you are, but what I do know is that I will find whoever did this. I don't care if I have to drag you by the hair kicking and screaming into the light, but I will find you, and I am getting my mother back. Dropping his mic onto the ground, he stomped back to the rest of his class. The reaction spreading like a wildfire, slowly spreading from person to person until the stadium devolved into chaos. The panicked voice of President Mike could barely be heard over the radio speakers. Go to commercial. Go to commercial. In a long, dark council room full of chairs, a handful of men and women whispered amongst themselves. They whispered in panicked voices at the news. Calm down, everyone, calm down. A tall, lengthy woman spoke, her suit nicely pressed and clean. No one will believe the mad raving of a child. All we have to do is play dumb, and everything will go back to normal. There is no proof of what we did. Another man stood up from his seat, his hair balding up top over the ears. Madam President is right. We may have to be careful with prying eyes for a while, but as long as we don't give anything away, we are in the clear. Cowardly words of confirmations were spoken throughout the darkly lightened room, like parrots repeating after each other. The double door to the room swung open, a panting man running into the room not bothering to recluse the door. Light peeked into the room through partly open doors, illuminating parts of the room in light. Madam President, we have a problem. He shouted through his panting lips, his arm waving a phone to and fro. Everyone looked back at him with startled expressions. We have a mole. I don't know how, but the top secret file of Lady Nagant has been leaked onto the internet. We have a team of people trying to take it down, but it's being shared faster. Then we can take it down. They know, Madam President. They know. The crowd cheered as the preliminary to the event was set to begin. Everyone gathered in a long tunnel leading out into the stadium. The shouts of students can be heard as they shoved and jeered at each other. Words of pride were shouted amongst them as they toed the starting line. Looking back, Jiraiya noticed Tsutsumi standing in the far back of the tunnel, looking lost in thought. She wanted to reach out for him, but everything he said was still bouncing around in her mind, creating an invisible wall between them. She wouldn't even know what to say to him right now. That was a lot to hear all at once. It's no wonder he seemed so angry right now. Feeling Momo nudge her with her elbow, Jiraiya met her eyes before sighing and following after her. Momo didn't need to say anything, but she knew that she was right. Leave him be for now. On your marks, everyone. Midnight screamed over the bustle. Everyone crouched down into sprinting stances, some more trained than others. Get set! She raised her whip into the air. The chaos died down as everyone posed ready to strike. Bringing the whip down, she screamed, "Go!" Everyone started running all at once, contestants pushing and shoving as they rushed to the end of the tunnel. But throughout the chaos of the beginning sprint, there was one person who had yet to move. Izuku Tsutsumi hummed as he bobbed his head before shaking it and pressing a button on his headphone, switching songs. A camera trained on him the entire time as he absently switched songs, his finger hovering over the button before stopping. He found something he liked. Closing his eyes, his foot tapped to a beat that no one else could hear, slowly bobbing to it as people watched on. They had expected to see something, but not this. Some watched unamused, while others were more on the confused side. Way up above, long red feathered wings swished from side to side as a pro hero watched. His yellow visor was zoomed in, and watching it all and letting out a chuckle, tapping his gloved fingers to his phone, he sat on a rooftop. Raising a canned drink to his lips, he took a swig before setting him back down. Go on, fly, little bird. Fly higher than I ever did. With startling speed, Izuku crouched down into a sprinter stance before taking off. Soaring like a missile through the air, he flipped, landing on nothing before taking off again. A purple pinball, missile soaring past everyone in a blink of an eye. Up ahead, Todoroki made it to the entrance, frost coating his arm as he turned, preparing to unleash a blast of cold before flinching as Izuku zipped past, the time slowing for a second as they stared at each other, a startled look on Todoroki's face at the sheer speed of his classmate. He hadn't shown off anything like that before. Sure, he was fast and extremely aerial, but never to this degree. Todoroki blinked, and he was gone. It looks like Tsutsumi is the first one to leave the tunnel. He's heading for the first obstacle to Robot Inferno. Snapping out of his daze, Todoroki cursed as he ran after Tsutsumi. He didn't even have time to freeze the entrance like he planned. Flipping past some missiles, Izuku ignored the attacking robots. Bouncing from robot to robot, he launched into the air and toward the zero-pointer from the exam. Landing on its shoulder, he launched up again, soaring past everything before jumping down and tucking and rolling on the ground. And down goes the zero-pointer thanks to Yaoyorozu from 1A. Tsutsumi is soaring past all the competition, but Todoroki and Bakugo are on his tail. Who will win? Not dwelling on it for long, Izuku ran far ahead, running straight at the large gap in the ground before leaping, landing on nothing with a roll. The crowd went crazy as he ignored the pit entirely just to ignore the mines as well. Feet running along the mines, they didn't go off. A small air wall separated him from the sensors as he ran. Launching into the air, he dipped, turning into a spin before landing right next to Midnight at the podium. The crowd roared, everyone standing and applauding him as he panted, running the back of a hand along his forehead. In a complete upset, Izuku Tsutsumi beat the first event in a landslide. Did that just beat the world record for the relay race? Handing him a bottle of water, Midnight smiled gentle at him, giving him a nod. Congrats, Tsutsumi, your mother will be proud. Blinking tears from his eyes, he smiled as he took the water bottle from her. Thank you. I can't wait to see her again one day. In a dark, run-down bar, a man sat on a stool. His hair was ratty and his skin was flaking. Raising a hand, he scratched at his neck as he watched the complete waste of a time the world liked to call an event. What a joke. Just a bunch of gifted people living their happy little lives. Why his master insisted he watched this show he'll never know. It's just a bunch of spoiled brats patting each other on the back and singing their own praises. The TV stayed trained right on the brat that got in his way at the USJ. He'd recognize that obnoxious hair anywhere. A low, deep voice echoed through the TV next to him, making him turn to face it. Well, there's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Kana Tsutsumi. You know her master? Not exactly. More like I know of her. He let out a deep laugh from the TV before pausing in thought. Let's see if we can help them. After all, who am I to get in between a woman and her child? Midoriya, are you even listening to me? Blinking a few times, Izuku Midoriya sat on the train, a slow, rhythmic motion bouncing the seats as they went. He was older, dressed in his high school's black uniform. Normally buttoned up as was opened, a white t-shirt peeking from underneath, with rolled-up sleeves over thick arms, faint scars tracing them, thick curly green hair up top, and a buzzed undercut beneath. Looking out the window of the train, he watched the skyline of buildings zip past, a moving horizon where the sky had just started to change color to a beautiful blue. The morning sun shone against his face. Looking back at the source of the voice, he stared at his best friend Itsuka Kendo. She was wearing a different school uniform, her orange hair tied up into a long ponytail, swaying lightly in the wind. Her arms were crossed as she lightly tapped her foot. Whatever he missed made her angry. Better fix it. Yes, I was drinking in every word you said. Raising an eyebrow at him, she continued to frown, her hands going her sides. Oh, really? What was I saying then? Okay, if he was honest, he wasn't listening at all. He was too busy thinking about stuff. Shrugging, he let out a sigh as he ran a hand through his curly mat of green hair. You were talking about how awesome you are, and to tell me to eat my veggies? Wincing, he felt her fist hit his shoulder, not super hard, but enough to hurt. Like I need to tell you that I'm the coolest person you know. Jabbing a thumb at herself, she smiled before thinking for a second. Her eyebrows raised in thought before looking back at him. Okay, fine, I'll just ask. What's wrong? What makes you think something is wrong? Letting out a scoff, she rolled her eyes before gesturing to him. Because it's you. You may pretend to be all tough and strong now, but you forget I grew up with you. I know you're still that stuttering, anxious cry baby deep down. Okay, ouch. That was a little harsh. Even if it's true, he could never completely fool her, huh? No matter how much he tried to play it off, she always worried about him. That's just the kind of person Kendo is. Sighing, he sagged a little in his seat before gesturing out with his hands. All right, fine. I'm feeling nervous. Happy now? Always. It honestly feels great to be the one that constantly wins. You should try it sometime. Huffing, he waved her away with his arm, before turning to stare out the window again, watching the city fly by. He remembered it like it was yesterday. The bullying from Kakin and his lackeys. Finally coming clean to his mom. Her suing Aldra for not only failing to intervene, but also in some cases even doing it themselves. The big, juicy settlement. Him transferring districts and being flung into a new school just to still get bullied. Only this time it was less physical stuff, and more being the bottom of the food chain with no friends. Signing up for karate classes, and meeting Kendo. Who would have guessed it led to being here? Taking a train to UA for their entrance exam with his best friend. How time flies. Snapping out of his thought process, he felt Kendo pat his shoulder, slowly turning to look at her. Don't sweat it too much, big guy, she said in a more gentle tone. We've trained forever for this. All we can do now is go out there and kick ass. He smiled a little at that. Yeah, you're always right. I know. She smiled back at him, raising her closed fist out to him. Now, what do you say, rivals? Returning the smile, he leaned forward, tapping her fist with his own. Rivals. The rest of the train ride to UA was pretty peaceful, all things considered. Him and Kendo quizzed each other on a few topics for the written part of the test. The train lurching to a stop. Stepping off of the train, he looked up at the massive campus. The main building is sheer monolith, practically blocking out the sun. He remembered reading once that the main building of UA consisting of 4 long towers with bridges connecting the 4 of them together in the shape of a giant H. The rest of the campus consisted of smaller buildings scattered all around that were mostly used for separate classes and dorms. A long, high wall stretching completely around the campus like the gate to a castle. From what he heard, the protection system was one of the finest in the world. He had seen what UA looked like on TV since he was a child, but even then he had no idea how big it was. Pictures simply do not do it justice. He couldn't even imagine how much money something like this would cost. The place was already packed full of people, groups of young adults from all walks of life talking amongst themselves and wandering about. So many people, and only a few actually allowed into the hero course. Feeling Kendo brush her shoulder against him, she kept walking, disappearing into the crowd of people. Yeah, she has the right idea. No point in CKing himself out. With a shake of his head and a slap to his cheeks, he followed after her, walking past some people and further onto the campus. Scanning the crowd of people he followed after her, Kendo's bright orange hair sticking out like a sore thumb in the crowd. A plus to being on the taller side, muttering excuse MES as he waded into the crowd, trying to be as polite as he could as he walked past. As he wandered past, he was unaware of a group of eyes watching him, a handful of girls stopping their conversation to stare. The group of punk rock girls wore all black and stuck out like a sore thumb against a wave of people wearing school uniforms. The tallest of the four girls having black cat-like ears and a tail, the tail swishing softly behind her. Her voice was like a gentle purr as she leaned against the wall to get a closer look. Oh my, is that Midoriya? Looking him up and down as he passed, she couldn't help but giggle. I know, right? Exclaimed another, her short bright blue hair constantly moving like it was in the wind. Looking his way, she sighed exasperated before flopping down next to Kyokajiru in her seat. I tried to flirt with him a few days ago, and all he said was, sorry I don't spend time with bullies, but he didn't look like that before. It's not fair. The last of their group, a tan blonde-haired woman with heavy eyeshadow, looked his way as well before lightly elbowing Kyoka's side. Kyo, girl, you used to be his friend before hanging out with us. Be a gal pal and put a good word in. I'm sure he misses you. Looking over Midoriya's disappearing frame, she felt a wave of sadness come over her before shaking her head. Getting up from her spot, she started to head farther into campus. Sorry, girls. I'm pretty sure I'm in the same boat as the rest of you. The sounds of disappointed boos from her girlfriends could be heard behind her as they followed after, unable to see the depressed look in Kyoka's eyes. The written part of the test wasn't too bad, honestly. He was feeling anxious before the test, and he had hit some snags here or there, but overall the questions weren't terrible. He had been good at math his entire life, and science was a memory thing more than anything. He was so excited to see that ectoplasm was holding the test this year, he was half tempted to ask for an autograph, but he decided against it. Punching forward, his uniform swished with a rippling sound, his left arm going back before punching forward again. After the test, his anxiety started to come back again. It didn't help that the bus ride down to the designated test zone felt like an eternity. Punching forward, he held his fighting stance, each punch attempting to knock his anxieties away. It was something he learned at the Kendo's dojo. Doing katas helped him resurface himself, be more calm under high stress. Taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes before standing up straight again. Slow, deep breaths. Think about the situation strategically, and don't dwell on the what-ifs. Fighting robots. Their test was to fight robots. He was unsure how well he would do against big chunks of metal. It's not like his quirk can help him in a fight. Opening his hand, he stared down at it, the rough calluses staring back at him. How was he supposed to tear apart robots with his bare hands? Frowning, he felt the anxiety start to come back in full force. This was crazy. Deep down he knew he couldn't do this. Maybe he could sneak away and just lie saying he got lost or something. The flash of a memory came to him. Kendo was younger, her face bruised and her clothes dirty. Smiling big at him, he saw that she was missing a tooth. With shaking knees, she stood up, raising her bleeding hand out to him curled into a fist. We may not be impressive now, but one day, if we push each other, we can be the best in the world. What do you say? Rivals? Clenching his fist hard, he frowned, a spark of green fire flashing from his mouth. No, he wasn't going to just give up. What was he doing? He was a Midoriya, damn it. There are two things Midoriyas are known for, and that is crying way too much and never giving up. He thought of his mom, his sensei, Kendo. Marching forward to the line painted on the ground, he unbuttoned his uniform, the two ends billowing in the wind as he punched his hand. Not only is his mom cheering him on, but he made a promise to Kendo. He had something to fight for. Time to prove everyone wrong. Present Mick's voice could be heard defeating the tense silence. And begin! Rolling backwards against the blow, he clutched at his chest before side, stepping a second strike. Raising his fist, it collided with cold, harsh metal, his teeth gritting from the punch. Reeling back, he hit it again, the metal bending under his fist this time before caving in. The massive robot collapsing into a pile of scraps before him. Panting, he looked down at his bleeding knuckles. That was only the fifth robot. He could hear numbers being shouted all around him, and they were way bigger than that. This wasn't working. He didn't seem to have time to process that information before another, much bigger three-pointer came out an alleyway rushing him. Knocked backwards, he tumbled into a trash can, sitting up with a curse. What the hell? That really hurt. Who the hell programmed these things to be so ruthless? Rolling out of the way of an incoming blow, he stepped up the side of the wall, leaping onto its back and wrapping his arms around its neck. It flailed around frantically in a vain attempt to throw him off, his fist colliding against the back of its head over and over. After the fourth hit, the metal bent, twisting and distorting until breaking under the force. The robot toppling over and turning off. Letting out a harsh cough, Izuku Midoriya slowly crawled off of the robot, rolling his shoulder before wincing. That little stunt really messed up his shoulder. Great. Leaning against the wall for support, he walked down the alleyway. Following the sounds of destruction, he wandered into the street, his hand holding his injured shoulder. There he could see a bunch of other examines destroying robots like they were nothing. God, he was an idiot for thinking he could pull this off, wasn't he? Of course, the most sought-after school in the country was going to weed out the weak ones. He wondered what it was like to be born with such a power, being able to blow away a robot with a laser, or be able to run fast and kick a robot in half. Watching these two fight off robots, he couldn't help but let out a harsh laugh. He wondered what Kendo would say right now if she saw how pathetic he looked. Boom! The ground shook beneath him, his legs shaking in a vain attempt to stay up before falling to his knees. Gazing around, he saw that everyone else was doing the same, a panic look in their eyes as they tried to figure out what was going on. What was that loud bang? Almost like it was answering his question, the ground shook again, the bang getting louder and louder as it got closer. Placing his hand on a nearby wall, he pulled himself to his feet, leaning against the wall for support. Turning the corner, he saw it, his gaze starting at the wheel before looking up and up again. A massive behemoth of a robot, its lumbering frame crushing a street as it went, the concrete cracking under the sheer weight of the thing. Smoke of destroyed debris covered the area as it raised a massive fist and punched a hole in the building. The ground shook, the building falling apart under its own weight. What the hell? Izuku's heart skipped a beat at the sight. The thing was massive, as big as a building. Staring up at it, people ran past him, attempting to get as far away from it as possible. Others seemed to dive down alleyways in a frantic move for more points. What the hell was he doing? This was insane. There's no way that he could do anything against something like that. Watching it in awed terror, it turned a corner before destroying a second building. It started to head down the street, not even seeming to care about the ant-sized people taking the test. Turning to run from the monstrous machine, he saw a brunette woman face down on the street with a massive slab of rock on top of her. She didn't even make a sound. She just laid there unconscious, a small pool of red forming around her head. He froze, his eyes unable to leave her unmoving body. Time could have stopped for a solid minute, and he wouldn't have noticed. Chaos erupted around him, all the sound drowning out. The machine was heading in her direction. Maybe it didn't see her, or maybe it just didn't care. His heart raced at the sight, his good arm clenching. He only really noticed he was walking towards it when a person's shoulder checked him running past. What the hell was he doing? Making a mad dash into the fray, he stumbled into the smoke, sliding to a halt at the unconscious girl. He bent down, gripping under the large slab of rock, closing his eyes as muscles tensed under strain, his bad shoulder flaring up from the exertion. Letting it go, he groaned, his hand rubbing at her bad shoulder. Shit, again. Trying to lift it a second time seemed to do just as little. He was too hurt right now, not strong enough. Turning to look around, he frantically looked for someone to help, his green eyes stopping at a blue-haired man with glasses. The same guy he saw from before. The man was just staring. He was obviously shell-shocked, his eyes haze and wide. Don't just stand there. Help me lift this. Izuku screamed at him, panic in his voice. That seemed to snap him out of it. The man shook his head before looking over at him, nodding. His voice was loud, as he weirdly enough saluted him. "All right." Running towards him, he settled next to Izuku, his hands going under the other side. The 0-pointer was way too close for his liking. The ground rattled as it got closer and closer. With a third heave, he felt the rock move, if only a little. "Yes, common, almost there." Screaming under the pain, he tried a fourth time, pain rocketing through his shoulder. The shadow towering over them stretched as it got closer, encompassing them in an overcast of dread. So this was it, Dying under a giant robot trying to save a girl? Honestly, he could think of worse ways to go out. Maybe life really does flash before your eyes right before you die. Or maybe one of those blows gave him a concussion. But he thought about the past again. Bakugo and his friends holding him down as they kicked him, laughing as they didn't even bother with their quirks. A guidance counselor giving him that look when he said he wanted to be a hero. The teacher shaking his head before sliding him a job pamphlet for being a nurse. The angry, tear-covered eyes of Kyoka as she spun around to glare at him. A group of girls watching them with amused looks on their faces. "Will you please just leave me alone, Midoriya? For once I can finally fit in somewhere. We were never friends, okay? I used you." He channeled all of that anger, all of that pain, and he screamed, his knees buckling as he strained to lift it, tears prickling at his eyes. If this really was the end, he was going to go out the same way he came in, kicking and screaming. God damn it. He really thought that was the end for him, dying surrounded by strangers trying to do something everyone told him he couldn't. Closing his eyes, he accepted his fate. The sound of footsteps running not away, but towards him. Snapping his eyes open, he turned just in time to watch a red-haired man run past. Red lightning covered his body as he knelt down and leapt into the air, soaring past him at an insane speed before reeling a fist back and destroying the 0-pointer with a single punch. Chunks of robot fell around them as the 0-pointer toppled backwards with an earth-shaking bang. Watching the red-haired man, he fell from the sky and collapsed in the horizon. Oh God, he hoped he was okay. Over the intercoms, a buzzer went off. Guess that's it for the test. Turning in time, he watched the third guy with crazy purple hair run up. His tired eyes stared at him before leaning down and helping them lift. With a third person, they were finally able to get the rock off of her, sliding her out into the open. Izuku immediately checked her palm for a pulse, relieved to find that she still had one. It was there, just really faint. Channeling the medic class from a year ago, he checked her over. It looks like she, for the most part, has a messed up ankle, hip, and the back of her head is split open. Is she dead? Grumbled the purple man, his eyes looking her over. Bite your tongue. There is no way such a prestigious school, such as UA, would allow someone to die on their grounds. We need to get her to a hospital tent. I saw them on the way in. They should surely help us. Bellowed the glasses guy. I don't know. We did sign waivers on the way in. Tuning their argument out, he sighed, the faded sound of their voices bickering behind him. Looking down at his hand, he closed his eyes, pausing for a second before opening them again, a green flame sparking across it before covering his hand. Not turning around, he reached his hand forward as he spoke. There's no need, I've got it. Izuku Midoriya was unaware of the wide-eyed stares they gave him as he ran his burning hand over her ankle, taking a deep breath. Sliding his hand farther up, his flaming fingers danced along her hip, caressing it for a second before moving up again. Sitting her up slowly, he leaned in close, his hand going over the injury at the back of her head. One deep breath in, he pulled the hand away, revealing the injury completely healed. Ochako Uraraka's eyes slowly opened, her hazy mind immediately thinking of one thing. Everything hurt. Blinking a few times, her vision started to come back to her. The first thing she saw was a man. He was about her age, with green hair and eyes. The sun was shining against the back of his body, giving him an otherworldly golden glow. She also thought she saw acute freckles on his face, mates. But it was hard to tell right now. Did she die? Coughing a few times, she attempted to speak, her mouth opening to weakly ask, "Are you an angel?" The angel stared at her, confused for a second before letting out a soft laugh. His laugh was so nice, she couldn't help but let out a weak giggle as well. Shaking his head, his green hair swayed, bulbing with emotion. setting her back down on the ground. He smiled gentle down at her. If she truly wasn't dead, she wanted to know his name. No, sorry, you're not dead just yet. Just be careful when first standing up. You're going to be out of it for a bit. Walking is going to feel weird. Getting back up to his feet, he turned to two other people, talking to them. She should be okay now, but can you watch her? I'm going to make sure no one else is seriously hurt. After they nodded at him, her angel stood back up and started to walk away. No, wait. Please come back. Tell me your name. She tried to speak, but nothing came out, her mouth hanging open, desperate to call out to him. Wait, come back. Do you like matcha? We can go get matcha. His green curly hair stood out amongst most people as he walked out of sight. Whoever he was, she hoped he got in so she could thank him properly. Her eyes slowly closed as she suddenly felt really tired. She dreamed of green hair, freckles, and kind eyes. Heading towards where he saw him last, he limped a little as he went. Coughing black smoke came from his mouth as he looked around. It didn't help that the pain of the girl's ankle and hip was added onto his messed up shoulder. He's surprised he can even walk around right now. Common, where did you go, mystery man? Looking over the wreckage, he found him. The red-haired man was laying on his back, slowly sitting up to rub at his hand. Oh, good, he's okay. Waddling over to him, he called out, hoping not to spook him. Hey, you okay over there? Standing up, the mysterious man looked over to him and smiled, waving his hand. Hey, dude, yeah, I'm okay. Sure enough, the guy looked basically okay. His hand was covered in a type of armor that was broken and flaking off, but injury-wise, he looked okay. That's good. You saved us back there, and I don't know what I would have done if you weren't okay. Yeah, man. I saw that manly display back there, and I just had to help. You were super cool, dude. Blinking a few times, he tilted his head a little. Manly? Dude? Oh my God, he's a himbo. Smiling, he reached his hand out to him. Izuka Midoriya. The red-haired man smiled wide with rows of shark-like teeth before taking his hand and shaking it. Ijiro Kirishima. Chuckling, he returned the smile. Glad it was all over. A pulse of pain went through him, making him groan. No, never mind. It's not all over. He was in so much pain. He also took that woman's pain as well. Swaying a little, he fell back onto the ground, staring up at the sky. He was so tired his eyes were already starting to close. Through his blurry vision, he could see Kirishima screaming questions at him. He was clearly worried for him. He seemed like a nice guy, even though his powers seemed bullshit. Sitting up quickly, he winced. Everything hurt. A smell of antiseptic hit his nose, making him cringe. He always hated the hospital. Before he could even say anything, a cane smacked against his head, knocking him back onto the bed. Stop moving around. How am I supposed to check on you wiggling around like that? Maybe don't hit me, and I won't wiggle around. Maybe don't wiggle around, and I won't hit you. Rubbing his head, he sighed. Staring at the room for a second, he's still in UA. Turned to stare at the source of the voice, he stared at none other than recovering girl. A surly old woman that was known for two things: having a wonderful healing quirk, and for having no bedside manner at all. An infamous hero both renowned for her deeds, but feared on how she does them. Coughing into his hand, his voice was raw when he spoke. How long have I been out? When he turned back to look at her, she was busy writing something down on a clipboard, not even looking at him. About 4 hours. I tried to heal you earlier, but you were so tired my quirk would have done more harm than good. Wait, what? Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his phone, staring at multiple unread messages. Most of them were from Kendo. Sighing, he collapsed back into bed. Good luck, mates. Just great. He made her worry again. The ceiling fan slowly spun around in circles. It says here that your quirk allows you to heal people by taking their pain. Why in the world would you use that on a girl that was on death's door? We have medics on standby. Recovery girl huffed angrily at him as she looked over her tools. Her back turned to him as she ranted. Young people these days with their love of self-sacrifice. Her words made him frown more up at the ceiling. Why did he do that? He probably threw his chance at UA away by being stupid. Running a hand through his green hair, he let out a long sigh. I don't know, I guess I just thought. If I can't save a single girl, what's the point of all of this? Recovery girl's motion stopped, her hand hovering over some medical supplies before turning to face him again. Her voice sounded more gentle this time, like he said the magic word or something. "Well then, that's an interesting answer, Mr. Midoriya. Tell me more about yourself. I might have an offer for you." Walking through the halls of UA, Izuku, Midoriya was dressed in his general studies uniform. Turning a corner, he made a frustrated sound as he found another dead end. What the hell was with this place? It was like a maze. He just wanted to find orientation? Making another turn, he opened a door to find himself outside, an area covered with trees and grass. His shoes crunched against the grass as he looked around. Was he outside right now, or was this an indoor thing? An explosion echoed through the air, a faint glow in the distance. Walking closer to the site, he yelped as a singed ball landed at his feet, making him jump back. Bending down, he picked it up, his thumb running against it as he turned it in his hand. He knows these burn marks. Hoping up, he climbed up a tree, sitting on one of the branches. Staring out, he saw a bunch of students standing in an outside gym. They looked like they were doing drills. That's weird. Didn't they have orientation? Flipping out his notebook, he started to write. Interesting. There were so many crazy quirks in this class. He started to write them down one at a time. As he wrote them down, he recognized a handful of them. He didn't know their names, but he saw the blue-haired boy and the brunette from before. They both looked to be doing well, a lot healthier than last he saw them. There were also the people he didn't recognize, Bakugo and Kyoka. Frowning a little at the sight of them, he ripped out their pages and tossed them aside. The less he knew about them, the better. He was so busy writing down that he hardly even noticed the long-haired man standing under the tree. Hearing him cough below, Midoriya gasped, falling out of the tree with a thud. Why is he always the one who got hurt? Looking over, he saw the long-haired man with the scarf looking over his notes with a frown. He watched horrified as the man raised a hand and turned the page before reading more. Quickly standing back up, he wrenched his notes from the man's hands. When the tired man looked at him without saying a word, he felt the need to immediately apologize. "Sorry, it's just a little embarrassing for people to read my stuff." He still hadn't said anything, simply looking him over with his cold eyes like he was judging him. "Midoriya, there you are." The door swung open, and in walked recovery girl with her cane. "Your class has been looking for you." Looking towards the tired man, she huffed, shaking her head at him. "Eraserhead, don't tell me you've been bothering the students." For the first time, Eraserhead said something, shaking his head before giving recovery girl a small smirk. "I have not. I found this student spying on my class." "That's not what happened." I cried, trying to defend myself. Wincing, Izuku felt his knee being smacked by recovery girl, ushering him out the door. "No back talk, mister. Go back to class." Soon they were alone, silently watching the door that he just left out of. The first to speak was Eraserhead, not looking towards recovery girl as he spoke. "So that's the kid?" Letting out a laugh, she smiled more. "Yes, that is the kid. What did you think of him?" "He's smart based off of what I read. He managed to figure out most of my students' quirks just by watching them from a distance." Pausing for a second, he tilted his head in thought before turning to look at her. "What is your plan here, Shizenji?" "Oh, what makes you think I have a plan?" "You know what I mean. You've never stuck your neck out for a student before. Why now?" Turning, she stared at the tree line in thought, her cane lightly tapping the ground. "You know as well as I do that the entrance exam is bullshit. Half the reason that hero culture has turned out the way it did was because of the obsession that the HBSC has with power. Too many people obsessed with power and status over heart. The boy desperately wants to save as many people as he can. He has a good head on his shoulders." Facing Eraserhead, she looked him over, their eyes meeting to have a separate conversation. "I've been talking with Principal Nizu. I want to create a program that helps children that slip through the cracks. A way to help children catch up and be the best heroes they can be. They already have the rule of sports festival. He can simply train and do well to get in." The sports festival is months away. That's months of a hero course, taking specialized classes, while the general study students only take gym. The gap will only get wider. With this program, we can ease promising students into the hero course. Turning away, she watched the trees move in the wind. Here's the deal. You and I will pick potential candidates and train them after school. Think of it as an extra class. If our picks do well during the festival, we can show the HPSC results, opening the door for many more potential heroes. Giving her a nod, Eraserhead head went for the door, stopping in the doorway before turning to look at her one last time. I'll think on it. A whistle could be heard in the air as the class of 1A walked onto the bus. It was the first day of rescue training for them, and everyone seemed excited, not more than one specifically. Their newly appointed student body president, Tenya Ida, was blowing into his whistle repeatedly, pumping his fists like an obnoxious train conductor. For the most part, all of 1A was giving him annoyed looks as they hopped onto the bus, already regretting their decision to put him in charge. The man was put in charge for a day, and the power had already gone to his head. That has to be a world record or something. It was so annoying that everyone let out a collective sigh of relief when it was revealed that it was the wrong type of bus for Ida's plan. 1A collectively agreeing to sit wherever they wanted. Walking slowly onto the bus, Izuku Midoriya let out a yawn, a hand rising up to rub at his eye as he sat down at the first seat he saw. He had deep bags under his eyes and ruffled messy hair like he had just woken up. If you first saw him, you'd immediately think that he hasn't been sleeping well lately, but the truth is he has never slept well. Conversation went on around him as people wandered onto the bus. Ida sat in his seat with his head between his knees. If anyone could see his face, they would see how devastated he was. I should have looked at the bus schematics this morning. Ida sadly bellowed, Uraraka sitting next to him to pat his shoulder. There, Ida, you'll do better next time. To his right, Jairu sat down, rubbing her ringing ears with a frown. Maybe next time don't go too crazy with the whistle. I'm not sure how much more that I could have taken. Yeah, man, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but you gotta be mindful of other people as well, bellowed Kaminari as he took a seat, his arm lazily hanging over the seat. The conversation drifted from there, Midoriya's eyes slowly closing, the rest of the world falling away. It wouldn't hurt to get a few extra minutes of sleep. Jolting back awake, he felt someone sit next to him. Turning to look at his frog classmate Azui. She was watching him with a quizzical gaze, her wide eyes watching him. Putting a hand to her mouth, she tilted her head cutely before croaking. Midoriya, I have a question about your quirk. Yes, Azui? Please call me Tsu. All of my friends call me Tsu. As for the quirk, I don't understand how it works. What's not to understand? I can control inanimate objects like a ghost. Well, yes, but I was wondering if you could control people the same way. I've only seen you use your power on objects. Midoriya was facing her now, raising a hand to scratch his cheek as he tiredly responded. No, I can't control people. It's too hard to focus when there is so much noise. If I tried, you would be able to kick me out fairly easily. Karo, that's really interesting, but why is it sentient? Sentient quirks are extremely rare nowadays. So I find it interesting that our class is not one but two of them. The class of 1A was watching them now, the side noise dying out as they listened to their conversation. In the corner of his eye, Midoriya could see Kirishima smile wide as he gestured out with his arm. Hey, yeah, that's right. You and Tokoyami both have sentient quirks. The Birdman in question gave a nod before he spoke, Dark Shadow popping out to give a thumbs up. Yes, I as well want to speak to you on that. It would be truly interesting if Dark Shadow got to speak with someone similar. Words of confirmations could be heard around them as they all threw their 2 cents in. Midoriya closed his eyes for a second before yawning. Oh, my quirk isn't actually sentient. It's not a separate entity. Watching the whole time, from her head to the other, the side of her eyebrows raising slightly. Karo, what do you mean? It acts completely different than you? How is it not a separate entity? I would rather not say.
Don't give up.
Letting out a boo in a seat in front of them,
Please recall
shook
me.
her head with a slight pout, her cheeks puffing out. Ah, boo. You can't just leave us hanging like that. Next to her,
I'm
Aoyama gave
recalling
a
a
nod,
teammate.
placing his chin in his hands as he smiled big at him. His
Thanks.
eyes were so sparkly and bright, Midoriya couldn't help but squint at the sight. I agree, Mon Ami. Hiding secrets in the dark are no way to be a hero. You must be honest like moi. Honesty isn't always the best strategy.
Help.
Weaknesses are usually best not spoken aloud. grumbled Shoji. The bus exploded into an argument.
I'm recalling a teammate.
The class of 1A loudly descending into chaos. It got so bad that Aizawa sunk into a scarf mode with a frown. Far up front, Midoriya's closest friend, Hitoshi Shinso, sat back a little, looking behind him with his tired eyes before speaking. Midoriya, yes, Shinso. Go to sleep for a few minutes. Feeling Shinso's quirk take hold, Midoriya's body went stiff for a second, his eyes shooting open before slumping in his seat, his body limp and unmoving. Glowing a light green, the class of 1A watched as from his unconscious body a second Midoriya appeared, his glowing eyes bright and happy. The happy Midoriya turned to face Azui with a big grin, pulling out a notebook to write into it. Oh, hey, Tsu. How can I help you? Although she never showed it, Azui was confused, her big eyes going from Midoriya to Shinso and back to Midoriya again, it taking her a second to say anything. Karo, how are you not sentient? Midoriya said you aren't separate entities. Oh, that's because of the bullying. It took him less than a second to answer, happily writing away in his notebook like it was no big deal, like his answer didn't make everyone on the bus. The collective of 1A stunned by how blunt it all was. The first to respond was Mina, sitting up some, her hands clenching into fist. The bullying. She had always hated bullies ever since she was little.
Help!
All it took was one asshole making weird eyes for her to hate all bullying forever, and that was after she punched him in the face. Before she could dwell on the thought for long, happy Midoriya turned to smile at her. Right, he never told anyone about that. Well, Midoriya was bullied a lot when he was younger. People used to push him around and call him creepy for his quirk and how he liked to take notes. Kakin especially. But Kugo sat up some when he felt multiple glaring eyes on him. Turning, he saw himself being gestured at with a thumb. Multiple people turning to give him an angry look. One of them being their teacher, Mr. Aizawa. Before anyone could say anything, however, he kept talking, completely oblivious to what was happening. It had gotten so bad that after a certain point, Midoriya built walls around himself and hid inside of them. I believe our therapist called it the hedgehog dilemma. Anyway, after so long of hiding himself away, he created me. Throwing his arms into the air, this bizarre, glowing Midoriya let out a laugh before looking back at Tsu again. The therapist called me Midoriya Unchained. So to answer your question, no, I'm not a separate entity. I'm still Midoriya. Just a Midoriya that's not weighed down by crippling anxiety or by years of being called worthless and weak. I'm what Midoriya thinks he's not, kind, truthful, and strong with the heart of a hero. Looking back down into his notebook, he continued to write. Content. A happy little smile on his face. His sparkling eyes blinking a few times before closing his notebook. Oh, looks like time's up. Midoriya is waking back up. Goodbye, everyone. With a wave, the class of 1A, including Mr. Aizawa, watched as glowing Midoriya went back into normal Midoriya's body. They really need to name quirk Midoriya something else. Sitting up, they watched Midoriya let out a yawn, stretching some before turning to them. All eyes were on him, giving him worried or concerned looks. Looking over the crowd, his gaze stopped at a very angry-looking Bakugo. Ah, other him blabbed. How much did I tell you? Everyone started shouting, all at once again. Getting knocked back against the rocks, a villain sat up, growling his long dog-like snout. Getting up, he lunged at Yaoyorozu again before getting smacked across the face with a staff, crumbling into a heap at her feet. Circling her, a second villain swung a long, sharp blade at her back, hoping to get her from her blind side, just to have it deflected by a second floating staff. The staff spun in the air before knocking the blade out of his hand, clanging to the ground. Before he could respond, he too got knocked out by Yaoyorozu. Turning to the floating staff, she smiled, giving a nod at the staff before deflecting a blow from a third villain. Thank you for the save, Midoriya. Stomping her foot onto the ground, Gyro let out a devastating sound wave from her boots, knocking multiple villains back, their glaring, angry faces watching them from afar. Behind her laid an unconscious, sleeping Midoriya, his body laying unmoving on the ground. Don't start shouting thank yous just yet. We got a lot more guys.
Thanks.
Turning, all three of them watched the group of villains from afar. They were huddled up in a group, glaring at them, none of them trying to move. Some of them walked back and forth like a lion in a cage. Taking a few steps closer to Gyro, Momo muttered a little under her breath, her eyes not leaving the potentially dangerous group. Why aren't they attacking us? They outnumber us 5-1. Beats me, they seem a little on edge. Floating next to the both of them, Momo's staff glowed before Spirit Midoriya's head popped out of it, joining in on the conversation. I was trying to figure that out myself. I think they don't know what we can do. Momo tilted her head a little as she spoke. Interesting. You don't think they know what our quirks are? Exactly. Otherwise, they would be more confident. Humming the glowing Midoriya seemed to think for a second, muttering softly to himself as he placed a hand to his chin. I think I might have an idea. Momo, can you make something that looks like a bomb but only beeps? Oh, yes. I think I can make something like that. And Gyro, can you amplify your voice? She nodded, a smirk spreading across her face. Heh, yeah, I can do something like that. I don't know what you're planning, but count me in. Sounds kind of funny. Turning away from the Momo opened her outfit, a faint glow coming from her stomach before pulling out a fake bomb. All right, now what? Taking the device from her, glowing Midoriya fully came out of the staff, it clattering to the ground, floating over the unconscious dog guy at her feet. He strapped it to the guy's chest. Taking a deep breath, Midoriya closed his eyes before diving into the dog like Hybrid's body, the body glowing for a second. They both watched as the unconscious body jerked a little, standing up back up on his legs. Turning toward them, they could see that his eyes were still closed. Giving them a thumbs up, he turned towards a crowd of villains before sprinting towards them. His movements were jerky and weird, like a baby that just learned to run. Top-heavy and uncoordinated. Smiling big Gyro stomped, shouting as loud as she can after them. We just turned your friend into a walking bomb. Better run before you get blown to pieces. Gyro and Momo watch from afar as these cruel, conniving, and smug villains turned into terrified children, their faces going white, their eyes snapping open and their bodies going ridged. One by one, they all started sprinting away from their friend's poorly running body. From cruel thugs trying to kill a bunch of children and chickens with their heads cut off. One even fell on his butt before crawling away on all fours. Gyro let out a hard laugh as two of them bumped into each other, like something out of a cartoon. Even Momo couldn't help but let out a giggle as Gyro made her best impression of an explosion sound. The villains disappearing over the horizon, the body that his body glowing a faint green. The spectral Midoriya floating back with a smug look on his face. Floating in front of them, he did a little bow like he just finished a musical before raising a hand up for a high five. Thank you, thank you. Hold your applause. Holy shit, Green.
Help.
That was amazing. Did you see the look on their faces? Letting out a laugh, Gyro gave him a high five, her hand phasing through his, but she didn't seem to care. Her face almost hurting from smiling so much. Letting out a few small giggles, Momo took a breath before speaking, obviously trying to hide her amusement. Yes, that was quite entertaining. But I thought you told Sue that you could not posses people. Only unconscious ones for a few minutes. But as soon as they wake up, I get kicked out of the body. Floating back over to his body, the ghostly green Midoriya went back inside. Midoriya sitting up with a yawn. Waddling back up over to their group, Midoriya pointed over to the center of the USJ. I'm going to go check on Mr. Aizawa. Is that the best idea? Wouldn't it be better to sneak around the front? Meet up with the rest of class. Gyro turned to where he pointed, frowning a little. I'm getting bad vibes from over there. It sounds dangerous. Giving a nod, Momo frowned as well. I agree. We are in no condition to go running into danger. Gyro injured her ankle on the fall, and you look about ready to pass out.
Help!
That's why I said I'm going to go check. It might be dangerous for you guys, but no one can hurt my astral form.
Watch
Rolling
out.
her eyes, Gyro huffed before pointedly poking Midoriya in the shoulder. Unless, of course, they decided to attack your sleeping body. I don't know if you noticed, dude, but you're a sitting duck outside of your body. A baby can hurt you like that. I get it. You were messed with when you were younger, so you don't care about your own safety. But at least care about our safety. Midoriya looked pissed, opening his mouth to say something before pausing. feeling a hand on his shoulder. Getting between them, Momo placed her hands on both of their shoulders, pushing them out of each other's faces. Jairu, Midoriya, please. We can't go fighting each other right now. Jairu, that was uncalled for. Midoriya, people care about you. Don't go risking your life over something so silly as pride. They broke apart, Jairu and Midoriya, turning away from each other with heated glares. Momo was standing in the middle with a sigh, clapping her hands together. Okay, let's meet in the middle. We will quietly go and check on Mr. Aizawa, but if the situation is too dangerous, we run. Got it. They both grumbled, making Momo repeat herself louder. Got it. Yes, Momo. Sure. Good. Now, let's get going. Turning, they watched Momo stomp off, leaving them alone. Quietly watching each other. They both looked like they wanted to say something, but after a minute, no one opened their mouth. Midoriya gave a small nod before walking next to Jairu, letting her lean against him as they followed after Momo. Slowly walking after her, Jairu's eyes would not leave Momo as she walked, muttering a little to herself. Is it just me, or is Momo smoking hot when she takes charge? All she got was a nod from Midoriya, followed by silence again. Making their way down the rocky area, they started to head out. Jairu turned to look at the rocks before sighing. Okay, fine. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that to you. I was bullied a lot myself. And I guess seeing how cold you can be and hearing your backstory really got to me, since I can kind of relate. Midoriya watched her, slight tears in his eyes. It's okay. Sorry if I always act like I need to prove something. You don't, though. You know that, right? You got in just like the rest of us. People care about you, Midoriya. Please don't throw that away. Hearing a voice being cleared, they both turned to see a smiling Momo, watching them up ahead. If you both are done being brooding, I hear combat up ahead. Remember, if it's too bad, we leave. Got it? Oh, this was bad. Hiding behind a rock, they watched Mr. Aizawa get slammed into ground. His arm twisted until it was broken. What do you think of him, Eraserhead? He's the bioengineered anti-symbol of peace. But you can call him Nomu. The thing, Nomu, let out a horrifying, bone-chilling screech, making everyone shudder at the sight. This Nomu was not like them. It was different, so much worse. Its massive, purple, muscle-covered body distorted and twisted to look almost human. The fact that it could almost be mistaken as a person besides a big beak-like face, an exposed brain, making it creepier. Turning to look at the massive being holding him, it crushed Mr. Aizawa's arm under his foot. Momo's hands go in her mouth in pure shock, her eyes wide as she watched Nomu lift Mr. Aizawa's head and slam it into the ground. This was bad, really bad. Before any of them could even do or say anything, they watched as a portal guy from earlier appeared, leaning in to whisper to someone they assumed was a leader. Jairu leaned in a little, stabbing her jack into the ground to listen in. They're talking about retreating. Sounds like Ida got outside of the USJ. Letting out a small sigh, Momo smiled. That's good. The hands guy seems to be having a panic attack. Now he's talking about killing kids. Whipping around to stare at Jairu, they both turn in sync to watch the hands guy go sprinting off into an angle. Staring at the direction that he was heading, they watched horrified as he ran toward a second group that was watching. The hands guy lunging at the group of Azui, Denki, and Mineta. All they could do was watch horrified as he reached a hand at Azui, not knowing what he could do, but knowing deep down that it was probably very bad. They froze. The man's hands over Azui's face before pausing, then outside before looking behind him. You really are cool, Eraserhead. Lunging forward, Denki reached his hands out, firing off a massive charge of electricity. When the smoke cleared, Nomu was standing in the way of the blast. What happened next happened all at once. Nomu grabbed and lifted a brain-fried Denki into the air by his arm. Sue shot her tongue out trying to save Denki. The man with hands over his face reached out to both Sue and Mineta. Mineta peed himself in fear. As the leader of the League of Villains got closer and closer, their death loomed overhead, his hand inching closer and closer to Sue's face. And suddenly, his arm was grabbed, pulled into the air with a speed that jarred him. The man with hands was now staring at Nomu, his blank face stare before reeling back and tossing him across the grounds, crashing far into the distance. Blinking a few times, Azui was confused, staring at where the dangerous man was just thrown. She was just saved by the weird monster? Normally, this kind of stuff only happens in the books she reads to her siblings. Looking over the area, her gaze stopped at another group. Across the way, she could see Jairu and a very flushed Momo. Her face was bright red as Midoriya laid face first into her chest unconscious. Tsu watched Momo flail around embarrassed as Jairu laughed at her for a few minutes before slowly turning to look up at the Nomu. Carol Midoriya? The Nomu stared down at her before glowing a faint green, Astral Midoriya popping out to wave at her. Hi, Tsu. Glad you're okay. I wasn't sure if this would work, but the guy called him bioengineered. And since he only responded to orders, I made the guess that he had no thought at all. Tsu Azui had never been interested in romance before. She had tried in the past, but for whatever reason, she never felt anything for them. People would talk about love around her, and she would always stare at them with a blank face, confused. Sure, she felt love for her family. She loved her parents and siblings like no other. Sure, she also knew an attractive person when she saw one. She's not blind. She's well aware there are many attractive people in her class. But love for someone her age? Love enough to hold their hand, or even kiss them? Never. So, watching Astro Midoriya happily babble on as he wrote into a notebook, she tilted her head slightly. A faint grin read on her face as she watched him ramble on and on about God knows what. That's news. Tamir Shigaraki was pulled away in cuffs, screaming and cursing before being tossed into an armored vehicle. Behind him, a horde of hired grunts and lackeys were also being taken away by police. It wasn't shortly after that All Might showed up, that on top of every teacher in UA, kicking down the door, and the rest of the villains were a cinch to clean up. The bizarre Miss Villain that teleported everyone there had gotten away. He was the only villain to manage to get away. Two wheeled stretchers zipped past holding the unconscious bodies of Eraserhead and 13, quickly lifting them up into the ambulance before speeding away. The class of 1A all stood amongst each other, feeling a mix of sadness and excitement, talking about their journey and battles. None of them were seriously injured, just scraps and bruises for the most part. Sitting on the curb, Tsu Azui sat with Midoriya in her lap. Even though he had went into his body, he was still in a deep sleep, his chest moving up and down slowly. Recovery Girl said it was a side effect of him overexerting his quirk, that he mostly just needed to sleep for a really long time. Leaning down, she brushed some of his messy hair out of his face. You know, he was actually kind of cute when he was sleeping. Leaning down, she placed her ear to his moving chest, her tongue sticking out as she listening to his heartbeat. This was nice. Sitting in a chair, Momo Yarozu looked out into the garden, the pale moonlight peeking in through the trees. Cool night air caressed the exposed skin of her neck, making her shiver. The only light coming from inside the mansion, illuminating the side of her face in a light glow. Letting out a thoughtful hum, she turned the page to her romantic novel, her mind drifting to other things. It had only been a few months into UA, the school semester starting in a rather unorthodox way. There was their homeroom teacher threatening to expel a student on the first day. A ruse she quickly saw through, much to the surprise of the rest of the class. Then there was the invasion at the USJ, Momo's first real run-in with actual villainy. She and her friends Denki and Jaira managed to get out fairly unscathed, with only minor injuries amongst the three of them. She could not say the same thing for the rest of their class, however. Tsu Azui was seriously hurt in the invasion, leaving the building with a rather gruesome scar, going from the top of her head down to her lip. All Might himself was even injured in the scuffle. He still came out on top, of course. He was All Might after all, but Momo could tell the fight took a lot out of the pro hero. On top of all of that, there was what happened to Mineta. The news of his death created a swirling, bizarre mix of emotions for her. The boy was perverted at his best moments and downright creepy at his worst. So when she heard him push Tsu out of the way of an incoming attack at the expense of his own life, she was conflicted. The funeral was a sad sight, both as a look at what kind of people would raise such a boy, but also the fact that they didn't even have a body to bury. Shaking her head, she attempted to free herself of downward spiraling again. Ever since she was little, she had always done that. Think and think some more until the thoughts stacked onto each other, clumping together like a growing mass in the back of her mind. getting bigger and bigger until it could not be held back anymore. Anxiety and weight of her family's empire was a hell of a mix for an 18-year-old. The wind blew her hair slightly as she let out a tired sigh, the faint traces of her breath lingering in the air, which now leads her to the events that transpired only a few weeks ago. The sports festival. She had planned so much for the event, trained and prepared for every outcome, but in the end it did not seem to matter. No matter how much she tried to think ahead, she was still beaten, merely pushed out of the ring by a shadowy figure that was so much stronger than herself. In front of all those professional heroes too, slamming the book closed, she set it on the table next to her. What was she to do now? She so wanted to go out there and make a name for herself.
Please recall me.
To be known by something other than her legacy. Perhaps her dreams were just that.
Got it.
Dreams. She was recently handed a few papers for the hero internships, but if she was honest, she had yet to look at them. She had thought about the situation over and over, what she could have done differently, how she could have prepared. But in every situation, she saw failure. She was not allowed to bring in gear beforehand. Everything she made had to be done during the event. She was unsure what she could do against such raw powers such as Tokoyami or Bakugo, or even Todoroki. It all felt like a losing game. The cards were not in her favor. The game was not built for her, like it was destiny for her to fail. Snapping out of her thoughts, she jumped a little at the sound of rustling farther into the garden. Quickly spinning toward the noise, she pulled out her trusty bow staff. An intruder? No one would dare try to sneak into the Yaoyorozu manor. Most common thieves would look at the impenetrable fortress. They'd call their home and look the other way. Even if they did break, and they would be sued into oblivion. Her parents knew some of the most powerful lawyers in the world.
Get in the car.
The grass crunched under her bare feet as she followed the noise. The sound of rustling getting closer and closer. The intruder had managed to sneak past their guards and into the garden, where security was the lightest. Whoever this was either a complete genius or a fool. Parting low-hanging branches, she sprung up, ready to strike, her staff hanging in the air before pausing. It was just a boy. He had to be her age or younger. If he was truly her age, he was awfully short. He was skinny, almost sickly looking if she was honest, like he hadn't had a decent meal in months.
Thank you.
His dirty sleeves were rolled up to reveal lean but strong-looking arms. On top of his head was a green curly mat of hair. It didn't look like it had been brushed. Ever, the boy was covered in a layer of dirty, almost thick enough to hide the small dots of freckles on his face. She watched confused as the boy pulled at their tree, wrenching an apple from it before placing it in a pile next to him. Oh, he was just hungry. She couldn't help but feel a little bad at that moment. She had heard from her father that apples from their tree had gone missing as of late, with no trace of who had been doing it. She remembers a hearty laugh he did after saying it. Looking back, it was mostly told in a joking tone, a conversation piece for dinner, if anything else. In all honesty, her father had not come down to this tree in years. If anything, the apples here went to waste most of the time. She watched the mysterious intruder pluck another apple from the tree before whipping around to stare, his big green eyes widening at the sight of her. They were so bright and beautiful. But when he looked at her, she could see guilt and surprise in those eyes. It seemed that he had not noticed her until just now. Gently placing her staff on the ground, she raised her hands, not to spook him any more than she already has. Hi. Sorry about jumping out like that. When I heard rustling, I assumed the worst. He watched her, his face a tinted shade of red, raising his hands almost mimicking. Shaking them back and forth frantically, he shook his head, his green hair swishing between. I'm so sorry. I've been here a few times, but I never saw anyone. I assume it was okay.
Watch out.
I'll leave now. No. Blushing slightly, she chastised herself on how aggressive that sounded. And no, please. You don't have to run away. You're not in trouble. Just give me a second. Taking a breath, she turned away, opening her nightgown a little to pull out a freshly made basket. When she turned back around, she noticed that he was staring. Normally, a cold, harsh feeling would come over her when people's eyes were upon her. There was usually something in their looks that would make her shiver. It was always her looks that people would compliment first. Her looks or her money, like her getting into one of the finest hero schools in the country, with all as didn't matter. Yet when he stared, she noticed that it was not at her, at the way she was dressed, or even her prominent figure that came in at a young age. It was at the basket. When she handed it to him, he stared in awe of it, like a child seeing magic for the first time. His voice was soft like a whisper. "Is that your quirk?" She suddenly felt very embarrassed. Giving him a nod, she rubbed at her arm gently. "It is. I can create any kind of inorganic material as long as I know the genetic makeup of it." That's really the possibilities of such a thing are almost endless. Why you can stock hospitals throughout the country in a time of emergency, or even create technology too hard to make normally. Items normally too small to make with your hands. The weird boy had started to ramble, his words bleeding into each other almost like white noise. She was simply fascinated by this green-haired stranger. Most people assumed her quirk was powerful and moved on, but this boy had a passion behind his eyes. He had named several useful ways that she could help within a few seconds alone. Even named off things that she didn't even think about trying herself. Could she truly make nanobots if she really tried? Regardless, the boy had almost effortlessly pulled her out of her spiraling self-doubt, a task that is normally very hard to do. This situation was so bizarre, so weird that she couldn't help but let out a giggle. If anything, this felt more like a scene in a story she'd read. Something called The Princess and the Peasant, perhaps? Her giggle seemed to have snapped him out of his musings, his bright green eyes staring at her again. "Forgive me, but I don't believe I have introduced myself yet. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu, daughter of a Yaoyorozu family. Might I get your name?" When she reached out a hand to shake his gloved one, he jerked away from her, almost like it was second nature. His eyes widened in fear for a split second before taking a step back away from her with his newly acquired haul. The action made her frown a little as she watched him fiddle with the strap on the basket of apples. "I am Izuku." "Just Izuku?" "Yeah, just Izuku." The air had become uncomfortable again. She got the feeling that he wasn't lying about his first name. But for whatever reason, he didn't want her to know the full name. Perhaps he didn't want her to look into his history. Let's be honest, she was going to do that regardless. Before she could say anything else, her new friend Izuku turned to hop back up over the wall. He was certainly spry for someone looking as starved as he was. Part of her wanted to call out after him, to ask him more questions, maybe even help out if possible. The boy was clearly struggling to survive, and she had more money than she could possibly do. Yet a part of her told her not to. Izuku had come off as extremely skittish. She did not want to scare him away in case he decided to return. Turning to meet her eyes one last time, he gave her a shaky smile, his last words lingering with her long after he was gone. "Good night, Yaoyorozu, and thank you." Perhaps she should read out in the garden more often. Walking through a dark alley, Izuku Midoriya wandered along his freshly acquired haul. With this many apples, they would be set for at least a week. Thinking about the face she would make when he showed up with so many apples made him smile a little more pep in his step. Today was a good day, almost like the world wanted to punch down at that moment. There was a clatter to his left. Turning a little, he watched as an older man with a shark-like head came out a separate alleyway wielding a lead pipe. Looks like a mutant type, most likely something involving his sharp teeth and strong jaws. He named the man Sharkbait in his head. The man's movements were concise. There was no question on what he was doing, walking straight for him. From his right came another man, with long, slick-backed, greasy hair and the glint of a knife in his hand. The way the man held the knife meant he either had a weak quirk or one involving knives. Something to consider. Izuku thinks he'll refer to him as Greaser. As the two walked towards him, he sized them up, trying to figure out the best situation. Strange. Mugging groups like this usually had a third member. Almost as if he heard his thoughts, a third man came out from behind the taller shark-like man. This one was dressed in a long green jacket, not a weapon in sight. The man was more on the skinny side compared to the other two, yet walked with a confidence that only society could put into him. Most likely an emitter type, the most praised type of quirk in society for how flashy it was known to be. The nickname Army immediately popped into his head based on the jacket. Great, just what he needed right now. Setting the basket down behind him, he sighed. Closed his eyes for a second before opening them again, slapping the most sincere smile he could onto his face. He made sure to give them a wave to acknowledge their presence. They usually hated being ignored. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing tonight? He croaked out. The three men laughed, walking closer but stopping a few feet away from him. The first to talk was the one with the shark head. He assumed he was the leader. Oh, just going for a walk. A little surprised to see a kid walking around at this hour. Greaser chimed in next to him, his voice nasally and high-pitched. Yeah, dangerous this time of night. Army spoke last, his voice cold and sarcastic. We may not look like it, but we three are kind and generous people. When we see someone who needs our help, we just have to help them. They all laughed again, like they said an inside joke amongst them. Their eyes did not leave him, watching him with obvious ill intent. Sharkbait immediately continued the conversation. That's why we're going to offer you a deal. You hand over everything you have, and we make sure you make it home safely. Izuku absently wondered if this whole thing was something they talked about beforehand, or was this all improv? Imagining the big shark-headed man practicing, his speech in the mirror at home made him smile a little. Maybe he even had little flashcards. Wandering over to the alley wall, he made sure that they couldn't get behind him, sliding his gloves off and dropping them on the ground next to the basket. That's awfully nice of you guys, but I think I'll have to pass. I don't have anything to offer, just a basket of apples. You're free to take one if you like. They didn't seem to like that answer, glaring at him as they stalked closer, Sharkbait reaching for him as he growled. Are you stupid or something? We're not asking. Now hand over everything that you... Reaching forward, Izuku touched his arm, making him freeze for a second, wrench his arm around before pushing him into the arm. The two of them toppling over each other and falling into the ground. Capitalizing on their surprise, he brought his forearm down on Greaser's knife arm, knocking it to the ground as well. Reeling an arm back and clocking the face as hard as he could, Greaser falling backwards from the blow, planting his red shoe on the knife. He kicked it away from them, clattering farther down the alley and out of sight, ducking under a wide swing of metal pipe. He took a step back, bouncing from side to side to avoid being in one place for long. In the corner of his eye, he could see Army getting up, raising his arms, trying to get a clean shot. God damn it, dude. I can't hit him with you in the way. At least bite him. Ducking under another swing of the lead pipe sharkbait, got more and more frustrated. I can't. I don't know what he did, but my quirk isn't fucking working. Before Army could get a clean shot, scarf like bandages came from the darkness, wrapping around him and pulling him out of sight. Huh, that was new. When Sharkbait turned to try seeing what had happened to his friend, Izuku struck, driving his fist into the shark hybrid's chest. Sharkbait bent over from the blow, clutching at his stomach. Grabbing him by the fins on his head, he brought his knee up, planting them against his face with a sickening crack. Hopefully that crack was just some teeth. He remembers reading that sharks have a lot of those. Panting near the unconscious body, Izuku heard the sound of footsteps getting closer. Turning just in time to see Greaser running at him with his newly acquired knife back in his hand, the glint of his blade shining in the moonlight. Jumping from the darkness, a new figure landed on top of him, immediately rendering him unconscious. The dark figure had long black hair, a gray scarf covering half of his face, and yellow goggles. A pro hero. Izuku wasn't sure where, but he's sure he's seen this man before. T thanks for the save. Nothing. The man watched him for a second in silence, his goggles making it impossible to see where he was looking or how the man was feeling. It was a little intimidating. When he finally spoke, he sounded really tired. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm okay. Could have been worse. Standing back up to his actual height, the pro hero dragged the unconscious body of Greaser next to his other takedown, Army, crouching down to tie them to the wall. The man spoke with his back to him. You fight really well for your age. Are you trained? And not exactly. Would you believe me if I said this wasn't the first be-back alley brawl I've been in? He tried to laugh it off, but to no prevail. The tired hero walking up to check the final thug before standing in front of him. Feeling his eyes on him again, Izuku couldn't help but shrink under his gaze. Homeless? What orphanage do you go to? I can walk you there. And no orphanage. After being abused at the third one, I kind of stopped going. Pulling his yellow goggles up, Izuku could finally see his face, revealing short black scruff and heavy baggy eyes. Even though the man had a harsh, imposing air about him, there was something in his eyes that told Izuku that he cared. The two tones were so jarring to see. Maybe he's just really bad with kids? Reaching his hand into his pocket, he handed Izuku a small black phone. Here, this is a burner phone I keep on me just in case. If you're ever in trouble, ring it, and I'll come running. Turning around, the man jumped up onto a rooftop,
need a weapon.
Leaving him alone with 3 unconscious tied-up thugs. Looking down at the little phone in his hand, he turned it in his grip, letting out a short snort of a laugh. Right, bad with kids it is. A low, scraping sound filled the air as the door was swung open, dust parting in places, their crooked, gnarly excuse for a door letting in a faint stream of moonlight. Walking into the dark, abandoned house, Izuku Midoriya carried a basket of apples, very happy about today's turn of events. He got to meet a pro hero, talked to a pretty girl, and he got a bunch of apples. Not a bad day if he said so himself. Carrying the basket farther into the room, he absently thought about the beautiful woman he met, Momo Yaoyorozu, a woman of both poise and kindness. Everything he was not, she had a bright future ahead of her in whatever she decided to do. Stumbling a little as silver blur slammed into him, knocking him out his thoughts and almost toppling him over, her tiny hands wrapping around him in a hug. Whoa, hey Eri, don't knock our food on the ground now. Looking down, he watched her bury her face further into his chest, shaking it gently, her long silver hair swaying. He could faintly hear her voice through the fabric. You came back. Of course I came back. I promise you after all. You took so much longer than usual. Sliding a hand along her back, he raised it up, gently tussling her head, his thumb absently touching the single horn on her forehead. He couldn't help but smile when she leaned into the touch. I know it will make it up to you. I just got us a bunch of apples.
Please recall me.
Would you like one? She nodded against him. Okay, let's eat some apples. Eri laid in a makeshift nest made of old blankets, her chest moving up and down slowly as she slept. Not far away was Izuku, sitting in his own makeshift bed made out of anything that was soft enough. He sat there silently watching her like an ancient protector. It had only been a few months since the little girl, yet he could not imagine how the world was not. He remembers when they first met. He was scrounging for food in a dumpster when she came running out of an alley, a long tattered dress and bandages going up both arms. She looked frantic, her head snapping around her, never lingering on a sight for long. Her eyes were wide, and her breathing was ragged and labored. Izuku Midoriya knew what a panic attack looked like, because he used to have them all the time. The deep breaths that clung to your throat making a heart attack, and terrified eyes that looked like they saw through you head. When she saw him, she crawled away panting, sparks shooting off the horn and arcing around her. Tears streamed down her face as she stared at him, her mouth hanging open in a silent plea for him to stay away. She almost looked like she was in pain. Izuku wasn't sure exactly what her quirk was, but whatever it did scared this little girl more than any story of a boogeyman. Walking towards her, he reached a hand out with his bare hand. Every step he took towards her was another step back until her back hit the wall. She whimpered out a plea for him to stop, her eyes shutting closed. Sitting there in silence, she cried until they shot back open at the feeling of his hand, gently running his fingers along her hair. When her quirk died out, he spoke softly to her, doing what he used to do for him, her breathing getting softer and less harsh as he coaxed her down the best way he could. Exhaustion hit her fast, and as her eyes slowly closed, she was engulfed in a warmth she'd never felt before. "It's going to be okay," was the last thing she heard. When she came to, he had brought her back to his little hideout. For the first few days, she was quiet. She wouldn't say more than a few words at a time, only stare at him and sometimes eat. Not a word of her name, or even where she came from. No family or place he could take her. He tried to talk her into going to police or even a pro hero, but she refused. The way she looked when he brought up the police scared him. She clearly knew something he didn't. It wasn't until a week later that he got a name. Eri, just Eri. The irony did not go unnoticed since he also referred to himself as Izuku, just Izuku. From the very start, he could feel a kinship with the girl. Just two outcasts that weirdly found a home together. Every day he would go out and scavenge for food. She kept trying to come along. He felt like that was a bad idea. Letting out a yawn, his eyes started to feel heavy. It couldn't hurt to get a little rest. Rain pattered against the dirt. The grass swaying along with a big tree in the distance. A light drizzle filling the normally quiet cemetery with the rhythmic sound of nature. The funeral has long since been over. The small amount of guests had gone back to their normal lives. A handful of chairs were sprawled out in the grass, with a single one knocked over. The only living being in the area was a single boy, a boy with green hair that swayed just like the grass. The saddest thing about a funeral was when it was over, everything goes back to normal. The world doesn't end, or even stop for a second. It keeps going, and doesn't expect you to catch up again. At the end, everyone still has someone to go home to. They either have a wife, or kids, or parents. Everyone else gets to go on with their lives. But not Izuku Midoriya. Izuku had so much he still wanted to do. So much he wanted to say. He was training to try and take the UA test despite everyone telling him not to. The only one who believed in him was his mother. He wanted so much to make his mother proud, to stop her from crying, even if it was just for a little while. But the dead can't cry. The dead can't do anything anymore. He should have told his mother he loved her more. He should have given her more hugs. He thought about all the diners he never complimented. He should have done a lot of things to help prevent her death, but deep down he knew that it was inevitable. What could he have really done to prevent a sickness? What could he have done besides be at her side in her last moments? He wanted to cry, but for some reason the tears would not come. Him and his mother had always been criers. They would start crying at the smallest things, and yet at the worst moment of his life, they were nowhere to be seen. That for some reason was worse. If he cried, he'd at least feel better afterwards. Well, maybe not better, but he'd be able to let go of some of this tightness in his chest. He didn't even feel sad anymore, just numb. The cold rain hit the back of his neck, and he felt nothing. He remembered reaching down to touch the grass, and he felt nothing. His knuckles had turned white from clenching, but even then the feeling escaped him. Why wouldn't they let him cry? He looked down at his rain-covered hands. A flash of lightning in the distance blinded him with light, and they were now covered in blood. He was somewhere else, an alley. He remembers this alley well. Looking to his left, he saw one of his bullies slump against the wall, his arm bent in a way it should not be bending. To his right, a second bully with his face bloody and bruised. He knew what he'd see if he looked at his feet, but it still scared him. It was a sight he was familiar with, a sight that haunted his dreams. But Kugo laid at his feet, his face distorted and twisted, teeth laid nearby in small puddles of blood. He desperately wanted to call out to him, to see if he was okay, but instead, he watched his body raise his fist into the air and start to punch. The sickening smack of flesh on flesh as he brutalized his tormentor's face. Memories of their past went off around him, and the numb, empty void gave way to pure anger. He was almost two people now, one doing this horrible, horrible deed, and the other watching on in terror. He wanted to scream at himself to stop, to beg for forgiveness, but his fist kept swinging. It wasn't until he felt a hand grab his wrist that he stopped. Turning toward the bully, he stared. The face and name escapes him now, leaving a blank canvas where a face used to be. Yet he still remembers a sad, terrified voice. Please, Midoriya, stop. We're sorry. You're gonna kill him. Just stop. He could not take it anymore. Turning, he ran. The alley stretching and growing with every step. The echoed call of Sari's calling after him as he ran. Pure white light shined from the end of the alley. He knew it was his salvation, yet no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't get closer to it. The slosh of blood at his feet, the sickening smell of copper. The alley distorting and turning a bright red. The light started to dim, fading slowly until he was plunged into darkness again, back to where he belongs. Snapping awake, with a start his blurry vision warped around him. His face was wet. Running a hand along his face, he realized that he had been crying. Sitting up a little, he felt extra weight around him. Looking down to see that Eri had crawled into bed with him, holding him like he did her when she had a bad dream. The sight was almost sweet enough to start another round of tears. Pulling her tiny body closer, he nuzzled softly against her. A small smile spreading across her unconscious face. No matter what happened in the past, he swore to protect this girl until his last dying. Perhaps that his past mistakes would stop him. Eri, don't run too far ahead. Midoriya called after her as he walked down an alley, dumpsters lining the walls on either side. Far ahead, just enough that he could still her, Eri happily giggled as she ran, her bare feet patting against the gravel. Hopefully they could find some decent shoes for her this time. Watching her run around in circles a few times, he couldn't help but chuckle at the display. Eri really did like it whenever they went somewhere, even if it was just to try scrounging for basic needs. She probably gets really antsy being trapped in a little shack all day. That's no way for a little girl to live, but it's what she needs to do for now. This isn't exactly the safest spot in the city. While a negative thing most of the time, it could also be useful. No one goes snooping around an area like this. Most people here just minded their own business and didn't ask questions. Being nosy is how you end up dead in these parts. A perfect place to hide away. For Izuku, it's to hide from what he did, to escape his guilt, and for Eri, it's to hide from whoever is after her. They both agreed that Eri wouldn't be able to go out at night. The memories of him being saved by a pro hero not even a week ago still lingering in his mind. Eri ran to the end of the alley where it split into two directions, turning around to face him with a big wave. Hurry up, Dad. I don't want to miss any of the good stuff. She called after him, making him blush slightly. That was certainly a newer thing that he was still trying to get used to, her calling him Dad. He's touched. Really he is. But he can't help but feel embarrassed whenever she does it, especially when there are other people around. He's never even held a girl's hand before, let alone do all that other stuff. Even if he did find someone's quirk, would probably get in the way. Who would be with someone that just dragged him down anyway? Anxiously pulling his gloves up a little more, he picked up his pace after her, watching her turn the corner and disappear from his sight. He smiled at how happy she had been lately. Memories of the first time they met crossing his mind as he walked. She's come a long way since then. Hearing a startled yelp, his eyes widened, breaking into a full-blown sprint as he ran after her. Turning the corner, he found Eri being held in the air by a man in a bird mask. She was kicking at him. Struggling to pull his hand off of her, feeling a spark of anger, he yelled after him. Hey, let her go. Surprised to see him, the masked man turned to face him with a raised eyebrow. This does not concern you, boy. Before he could respond, Eri wrenched forward and bit at his hand, making him let her go with an angry yell. Falling on the ground, she quickly ran over and hid behind him. Gah! You germ-infested, disgusting creature. That is no way to treat your father. Father? Is this who Eri has been hiding from? She leaned in to hold his hand, his eyes looking over her to make sure she wasn't hurt. Gazing down at her, he stared at her scar-covered arms. The bandages were so old and ratty that he had to throw them away a while ago. Was this the man who did this to her? How abusive of a father was this? Help! The man spoke, making Izuku's gaze snap back to him. Eri, come here. Eri did not budge, shaking her head from side to side, seemingly unwilling to move from behind him. Walking backwards slowly, they inched towards the exit of the alley. Get in the car. Hopefully not enough to immediately draw attention. The beak-faced man seemed surprised. The man's hand clenched and unclenched at his side before trying again. Daughters, they can be so troublesome at times. Taking a step back, his eyes didn't leave the man as he tried to keep the space between them. If he kept the man talking, maybe he could think of a situation out of this. Why, yeah, I remember being in a rebellious phase at her age, too. The beak-faced man laughed at his comment, but it didn't sound real. It sounded too tense and angry to be real. Stalking toward them, he could tell just with the way he held himself that he was getting angry. Walking backwards, they bumped into one of the walls. His imposing frame getting closer. staring at them as he slowly tugged at the bottom of his gloves. Yes, in my experience, they just need a little tough love to remind them who's in charge. Last chance, Eri. Come to Papa. Eri refused to move, shrinking farther and farther behind him until she was basically unseen. The action causing the beak-faced man to let out a growl. Hooking his finger in his right glove, he slid it off, dropping it to the ground as he continued to walk towards him. Reaching his ungloved hand out, he touched the side of Izuku's face. "Thank you for helping me find Eri again. Now be gone." Nothing. Confused, the beak-faced man pulled his hand back to stare at his fingers, his head tilted to the side. As the man tried to figure out what was going on, Izuku realized what this man just tried to do. He just tried to kill him. Pulling a hand back, Izuku struck him across the face, knocking him back a little with the strike. There was no chance for a breather. He had to push the advance in case he figured out what had happened. A second strike to the stomach made him crumble, bring his head down enough for Izuku to elbow him across the face. The man fell back, grabbing at the wall. He was dazed, pressing his fingers against it in an attempt to do something, most likely trying to use his quirk, to no prevail. Frustrated, the man attempted to swing a strike with a wild punch of his own, catching it between his elbow. He twisted it hard to disable his arm. Keep the advance. Don't give him a chance to breath. Dazed and confused. People with powerful quirks always rely on them too much. That was an advantage. Read his movements and strike. The man swung a tired punch with his good arm, taking it in an arm bar. He swung him back against the wall, knocking him to the ground. With final concise movement, Izuku ran towards him while he was on his knees, raising a leg and driving his foot across the bird-like mask. The mask cracked slightly from the floor, falling back against the floor unconscious. The man was defeated, his limp, unconscious body reminding him of something. He thought of Bakugo again, the way he laid at his feet. Why does he keep doing this? He hasn't changed at all, has he? Breathing heavy, heart racing, Izuku could not look away from the crumbled form of the man. What did he just do? It all happened so fast. Looking down at his hands, he realized that he was shaking. It's been a while since he thought he was over these by now, but no luck. A tiny hand wrapped around his, snapping him back into focus. Right, Eri. She was frantically screaming something, but he couldn't hear it over his own beating heart. Everything was blurry, like he was moving in slow motion. His senses were dulled and warped. Eri pulled at his arm, tugging him further down the alley.
Supplies.
He didn't question it. He just started to run along with her. It wasn't until they got farther away did he start come back to his senses. Making a turn down an intersecting alleyway, he finally heard what Eri heard. What had gotten her so spooked. Multiple footsteps. Oh! He wasn't alone. Pain. Throbbing, pulsing. Exhaustion ran to the collective class of 1A. Each and every one of them pushed to the brink and swatted around like they were flies. Beads of sweat fell to the ground as Bakugo panted, slowly staggering back to his feet to glare at his opponent. He wanted to test his mettle against one, quote, Big Four of UA, an upperclassman that came to their class and had the nerve to challenge their entire class at once. Bakugo assumed he was all talk, but sadly that did not seem to be the case. Bakugo couldn't even scratch him, let alone beat him. Grumbling, he rubbed his hurting stomach, the same place where fucking Tintin hit him not a few minutes before. Screaming power at the top of his lunges the entire time. Letting out a laugh, the blonde-haired was embarrassed. Sorry, everyone. I tried to make it, so you couldn't see my willy. My apologizes to the girls. Geez, Mirio, you really need to learn how to hold back. Chimed the spiky-haired one, his face still facing the wall. Giggling, the floating one wiggled in place. You weren't even watching Tamaki, too busy hiding to watch. Besides, you know how Mirio gets when it comes to fighting. Throwing his pants back on, Tintin turned to face him with an obnoxiously wide smile. His smile absently making Bakugo think of a young All Might to his disdain. Anyway, so it's like that. I hope that helps you guys understand. Nearby Shitty Hair stood up to shout back angrily. Hey, what gives? I didn't learn nothing from that. All you did was punch me in the stomach. I already know how to do that. Yeah, that fight hardly seemed fair since you have multiple quirks. Shouted Raccoon Eyes, her cheeks puffing out. Making us fight the strongest person at UA hardly seems fair. Of course we would lose. Their group, shouting out agreements around him. The three turned towards her a little surprised, Tintin blinking a few times before smiling. But I'm not the strongest student at UA. All of 1A paused to stare, blinking oldish before shouting out all at once. Even Bakugo looking a little surprised at that. He wasn't the strongest at UA. Then who? W8. Round Face said, taking a step forward.
Awesome.
If you aren't the strongest in UA, then who is? Red. Chunky sneakers slapped against the floor, echoing through the hall as he ran. Adjusting the collar to his uniform, he panted, making a turn before getting closer and closer. Thrusting both of his arms against the gym doors, they swung open with a loud bang. The light from the outside world, making all of them squint. When the door closed again, they were finally able to see. Standing before them was an older Deku. He was lean and tall. The sleeves to his uniform rolled up to reveal strong-looking arms with the faint trace of scar. The collar to his uniform haphazardly thrown on and his tie dangling in his hand. His messy, green curly hair was longer, pulled back tightly against his head into a small ponytail. Sorry I'm late. There was a problem at Naitai's agency. Their 3 senpais all turning to smile big at him. Izuku, dude, glad you could make it. Wave, Tintin.
Awesome.
Spiky hair giving him a shy nod, and Fairy Girl gasping out. Flying towards him, she practically ran him over, tackling him into a big hug and lifting him into the air. Zuku, I missed you,
Awesome.
She exclaimed, rubbing her cheek against his chest. Chuckling, Deku stuck a hand out to run it along the top of her head, lovingly, an action that she leaned into, slowly setting him back to ground. We just saw each other a few hours ago, Hato, but it's good to see you too. Midoriya, you're late. I've made myself perfectly clear I do not tolerate tardiness. Count your blessings that you are no longer my student. Rubbing at his neck, Deku chuckled awkwardly as he turned toward their teacher. Apolog's Aizawa-sensei, I'll explain what happened Deku? What the fuck are you doing here, you loser? Bakugo's shout, making everyone in the gym turn to look at him. Midoriya, just now noticing him. Blinking a few times at him like a deer in headlights, the nerd tilted his head before smiling. Oh, hey Bakugo. Don't hey Bakugo me. What the hell are you doing here? You know him, Baku, bro? Shitty hair asked, poking her head around Deku to stare. The fairy girl tilted her head curiously. You know him, Zuku? Turning towards her, Deku smiled, gesturing his hand out to him before hesitating. Yeah, I told you about him. That's Coughing into his hand, Deku muttered the word out in the hopes that he wouldn't hear. Kakin. Bakugo's eye twitched at that word. Oh. Slowly. Bakugo watched the normally bubbly face of the fairy girl morph into a pure scowl the likes of which he had never seen before.
Help.
If looks could kill, he would be a smear on the ground. Oh. Tintin frowned as well, shaking his head as spiky hair muttered next to him. You should have hit him harder. Reaching forward, Deku poked Fairy Girl's cheek, and just like that she was back to normal, letting out a little giggle.
Awesome.
No killing our underclassman, Hato. Ah, pooh. You never let me have any fun. Walking forward, a little Deku looked over his class with a smile. Hello, everyone. Despite Bakugo shouting Deku repeatedly, that is not actually my name. My name is Izuku Midoriya, and I am one of the big 4 of UA. Does anyone have any questions for me? Engine Legs raised a hand into the air, only asking a question when Deku pointed towards him. Yes, hello. My name is Tenya Ida, class representative. I was curious as to why Bakugo referred to you as Deku instead of your proper name. I take it you know each other? Yes, me and Bakugo grew up together. We lived on the same block when we were younger, and our moms are close friends, even though I was older than him by 3 years. Any other questions?
Marked a location.
Icy Hot raised his hand before asking in a monotone voice. Are you really the strongest person at UA? The class all muttered amongst each other, Deku shyly rubbing the back of his neck at that. I wouldn't say the strongest. We're all really powerful, and all 4 of us have our strong suits. You sell yourself to little Izuku, shouted Tintin, bouncing next to him and patting his shoulder. You are totally strong and deserve your title. Yeah, I keep saying you need better self-estimate, shouted Fairy Girl, as she clung to his back like a koala, wrapping her arms around his neck. You're also really nice, chimed in Spiky Hair, shuffling over to join their group. Bakugo's I twitched again. Oh, give me a break, shouted Bakugo, waving his arm to the side and interrupting their annoying jerk-off session. You want me to believe the greatest hero school in the country not only let you in through its halls, but also deemed you the strongest one here with your pathetic quirk? Not likely. Before anyone could respond, Princess gently raised her hand into the air, standing with an elegant type of poise, her other hand placed behind her back as she spoke. That actually leads us back to the current subject at hand. We were just speaking on the idea that fighting someone like Mirio-senpai was unfair due to the nature of his powerful quirk. Yet if Bakugo is to be believed, you yourself have a weak quirk. So how is it that you are held up on such a pedestal? And how does this relate to the subject of our internships? Staring back at her with an analytical gaze, it quickly gave way to a wide smile, breaking away from their group to step forward. I'm glad you asked. This is actually my favorite part of these. Pulling one of his nerdy loser notebooks, out of nowhere, he started to write. I would love to know all of your quirks, but sadly I don't think we have time for that. Do we have time for that? Looking back at their teacher, Mr. Aizawa met his gaze with a tired sigh before shaking his head. Didn't think so anyway. Closing his notebook again, he smiled at all of them. Believe it or not, but all four of us started out with weird and weak quirks. Turning towards Fairy Girl, he pointed at her with a pencil. Knee-Gyre couldn't even float higher than a few inches off the ground, and her quirk zapped her of all of her energy. I got to sleep a lot in class. She chimed in with a giggle, next pointing at Spiky Hair. Tamaki could only shake his head and made him really sick. It was the worst. Finally, he pointed at Tintin, and Mirio kept running into walls and losing his pants. Have to admit it was kind of funny. Laughed Tintin as he gave a thumbs up. At the start of the school year, all four of us were the bottom of our class, the losers who everyone thought wouldn't make a year. They all looked stunned at that. Princess quickly righting herself and gesturing at him. And yourself? Midoriya-senpai. Letting out a big laugh, he shook his head. I was the worst of all. When I was younger, all I could do was pull things toward me like a magnet, only I could never turn it off. The other kids would call me useless and throw things at me, making them stick to my skin. Bakugo couldn't help but snicker at that. Those were good times. His class all turned to him to glare at him before turning back to Deku. Raccoon Eyes now looking at them all in a new light,
Enemies ahead.
Quickly raising a hand. What changed? Taping the pencil to his cheek. We trained really hard. Every day after school, all four of us were in the gym trying to hone our skills and abilities. That's how we all started. Looking amongst his friends, Deku smiled, all of them looking back with the same look. As for me, however, I discovered that there was more to my quirk than meets the eye. Some of you may already know this, but quirk doctors can be a little archaic, and they aren't always right. By doing full-blown internships, I learned that my body wasn't like a magnet at all. Instead, I found out by trial and error that I actually create my own orbit around myself. Kind of like a round cheek stood up straight with wide eyes, raising her hand high into the air and excitedly shouting, like a planet, yelled Deku, smiling wide before turning toward their teacher and pointing at her. I like that one. All their teacher did was nod, but Round Cheeks quickly turned bright red under the attention, making out an embarrassed eep sound as she hid behind engine legs. Raccoon Eyes and Invisible smelling blood in the water like sharks and quickly letting out catcalls to tease her. Princess quickly raised a hand. I see, that is fascinating. But what allowed you to turn your quirk off? You said before it was always on? What changed? Oh, nothing changed for that. That was not the answer she was expecting. My quirk is always on. I just found a way to dial the frequency. So far down it doesn't look like it's on at all. It's a little embarrassing, but sometimes when I'm distracted it still happens. It's true. Fairy Girl floated in, words flowing out of her mouth like a river. Like this one time during sex scene. Deku's hand went to her mouth, so fast Bakugo could swear he saw his hand blur. The nerd's face turning bright red. Hato? Sweetheart, I don't think they want to hear about that. Tintin letting out a big laugh as spiky hair hid in his hands. Raccoon eyes smiling widely as she clapped her hands together at the sight. A new twinkle in her eye as she picked up on a new dynamic she was unaware before. Shitty hair looking over at his friend and rolling his eyes playfully. No, please don't stop on our account.
Okay.
Tell us more lovebirds. She chimed. Mina, please. Now is not the time for such a thing. Chastised Engine Legs, his face also bright red. Their class laughed at that, the tension in the air leaving them. A good story, but I call fucking bullshit. Shouted Bakugo, taking a step forward as sparks moved along his hand. Deku and his bitch stopped wrestling to turn toward him with raised eyebrows. Deke pulling his hand away when he felt her like his hand. The nerd shaking his wet hand off and looking at her incredulously, wiping his hand off and turning to face Bakugo. Bakugo, I assure you it's all true. Sighed Deku. Bakugo didn't like his tone. Even now the weakling thought he was better than him. Bakugo! Engine Legs chopped his arm towards him. It's important to take the experienced words of our senpais to heart. They have wisdom to give. That made him scoff. Yeah, right. Like I'm gonna take advice from fucking Deku. He couldn't even fight his way out of a paper bag. Prove it then. Muttered icy hot. If you are so sure you fight him. One-on-one. I fucking will. Then you'll see. Looking amongst the arguing, Deku blinked a few times. Don't I have a say in this? Turning towards their teacher, he simply sighed and slinked back into his sleeping back. Fairy girl leaning in to kiss his cheek. Kick his ass, babe. She smiled as she floated away to put distance between them. Tintin giving Deku a thumbs up before walking off with spiky hair. Deku! Bakugo shouted, breaking off from class and sprinting at him. I'm gonna fucking kill you. Jumping high into the air, Bakugo fired off a few medium blasts just to test his power. The explosion soaring through the air and colliding straight into Deku. When the smoke cleared, he was untouched. Deku just staring down as he wrote a few things down in his journal, muttering softly to himself. Bakugo couldn't help but be a little surprised, shaking his head before letting out a growl. How about this? AP shot. Placing his hands together, he created a concentrated point, squeezing them tightly as he fired off a pure blast of explosive energy. The beam connecting, but yet again no damage was done. What the hell? Does he have some kind of barrier? Finishing his writing Deku's book, slam closed, turning towards him with a sigh. Okay, my turn, he said, taking a step forward. Bakugo got down into a battle stance, preparing himself for whatever was about to happen. He knew he had perfect reflexes. Whatever Deku was, dodge easily and counterattack. Yet, every step of Bakugo felt like an extra amount of building pressure, weighing him down. Gritting his teeth, he tried to hold himself upright, but his stance was getting lower and lower, his knees fighting to even stand under the immense weight. He was almost entirely on the ground. His knee falling before the other, his back screaming out at him. It felt like he was stuck in a compressor, an invisible force pinning him down. His hands clenched into fists as he growled, the ground starting to groan under the weight. Bakugo letting out a strangled gasp as he closed his eyes, and just like that it was gone. Letting out a breath, Bakugo wasn't sure. He was holding, he panted. Deku crouching down to stick a hand out to him, not unlike he did when they were kids. Are you done now, or do you want to keep going? Panting, Bakugo stared up at Deku, a frown stretched across his face. He was just humiliated not once, but twice today. Normally he would not let this stand, but deep down he knew that he was not strong enough to fight against Deku at the moment. His pride would not allow a third fight. Grimacing, he took Deku's hand, quickly being pulled back to his feet. Patting himself off, he could feel his entire class watching him. He didn't need to see their faces to know that they were enjoying him getting knocked down a peg. That was fine. He didn't care what they thought anyway. Yanking his hand away, Bakugo scoffed. not meeting Deku's eyes as he walked back to his class with his tail between his legs, making sure to shout to know that Deku didn't scare him. This isn't over, Deku. You hear me. Just you wait. I'm coming for your fucking title. Smiling at that, Deku shook his head, placing his hands on his sides. I welcome the challenge, Bakugo. I welcome the challenge. Floating nearby, Fairy Girl pulled him into a side hug, giving him a big kiss on the cheek. Tintin and Spiky Hair walking over to cheer, the four happily talking amongst each other, only really needing each other. Yui Kodai had always loved listening to people talk. It calmed her in a way she could never really describe. Not in a creepy way, of course, but there was always something so soothing about listening to someone talk about something they care about. To hear that heightened tone in their voice and see that sparkle in their eye as they spoke excitedly. It was like white noise for some people. Calming. The problem, however, is that she was terrible at actually, talking to people. Terrible at speaking at all, really. She would much rather listen to someone else talk than saying anything herself. But sadly, the truth of the world is that conversations were a dance. One could not exist without the other, and taking to the tango and all that. So she found her fix through other means. Podcasts, ASMR videos, interviews. Hell, sometimes she would just sit in a busy coffee shop as she drank her tea and pretended to type away at her laptop for hours. She always had some kind of book report to finish. It was easy to find herself being lulled into a calming state as the noise of living surrounded her from her everywhere. Then she met him. Sitting down at her designated seat, a low chatter of noise filled the auditorium. Normally, such a thing would be like a dream come true to her, but this was different. An anxious buzzing in the air that was doing more harm than good for everyone involved. It was something about how everyone sat, their rigid forms betraying their lack of excitement and layers of worry. What was that thing that she read about a few years ago? Oh, that's right, mob mentality. It was smothering even for the most optimistic person, but for her, mood sponge that she was, found herself drowning in it. The collective whispers of everyone clinging to her and dragging her down into the deep, dark pits of her anxiety. Even after a pro hero came to start talking about the physical part of the exam, she found herself struggling to make sense of it. It was all too much. She felt like she was going to be sick. Maybe her parents were right. Maybe she didn't belong here. Maybe she should have stayed in the back of the room, been happy with the limited attention she was given. Maybe there was still a chance to leave. Braving the crowd outside was harrowing, but maybe leaving would be easier. In a snap, she locked back into focus. A low noise filled her ears, drowning out the voices. It was not hard to hear, but it was hard to make out a low flow of words like a stream. It was soothing, gentle, exciting. It didn't take her long to find it. There, not but a few rows down, was a boy. He was short and skinny, hardly someone who was conventionally attractive, but his green bush-like hair looked so soft, and the ways his eyes sparkled made it hard to look away. He was excitedly muttering about something, his pencil moving a mile a minute as he wrote away in a notebook. She was a little surprised the notebook didn't catch fire from the friction of his movements. It took her a bit longer than she liked to admit that she wasn't the only one who took notice of the boy. Most of the people in the auditorium, in fact, was staring right at him. The gaze, she would say, was mostly unkind and mocking, but she couldn't help but note that everyone in the room benefited from it. It's almost like all of the anxiety of the room was being directed towards him, and he was collecting it and shooting it up and out of the room. Letting out a hum, she closed her eyes as she listened to the off sound. A small smile tugging at her lips as she rocked a little in her seat. Awesome. But just as fast as it arrived, equally as fast. A boy not far from where she stood up to the young man. His glasses glinting with annoyance as he karate chopped towards the boy. He spouted something about tradition and the like, but all she could do was think about how fancy his school uniform looked. Blushing deeply, the green-haired boy quickly shut up. His face turned a bright shade flashed against his green hair. His notebook snapped in his clothes as he stared at the ground, obviously embarrassed. The audience having a good laugh at that, almost like they didn't realize how much his muttering lifted the mood of the room. Why was it that it was okay to mock someone who was openly different and enjoying themselves? She never understood why. It was infuriating and equal parts obnoxious and oblivious. The crowd moved on to the exam, but she did not. She stood there for an extra moment and watched as the strange boy picked up his things, rubbing the back of his knuckles against his face to wipe at the faint hint of tears before moving on his way. Frowning gently, she let out a hum, looking down at her paper. She had to focus on herself, else she'd be left behind. She was feeling a bit better now, so she took note of where she needed to go, took a slow breath, and dived back into the flowing crowd of people. She had an exam to pass. Her worries about the exam were gladly unfounded. Sticking to the shadows, she weaved in between the combat of others and took points when she could. A crushed robot from a boulder here, a shrunken head of another there. Silently, she weaved her carnage in between the combat of others, and many didn't realize that she even did it. How the UA judges saw it was beyond her, but she was happy that they did. Getting in at a respectable rank, she found herself going to the first day of school dressed in her newly acquired uniform. Like usual, all eyes were on her when she arrived, a group of boys turning their heads in unison when she walked past. Kodai always hated their gazes. For whatever reason, boys her age loved to stare and ogle at her despite her clear disinterest in them. Ignoring their hungry looks, she focused her gaze straight ahead as she navigated the vast halls of the legendary school. When she arrived at her class, she was greeted by a kindly orange-haired woman that was maybe just a little too friendly this early in the morning. "Hiya, morning." She smiled, her hand waving as she greeted her before reaching that same calloused hand out towards her. "Name's Atsuka Kendo. Pleasure to meet you. My parents always said it was important to greet your colleagues, especially since we'll be seeing each other a bunch for the next 3 years." She couldn't say it aloud, but she admired that. Being able to just walk up to strangers and talk to them, just like that was a skill she would love to have. She muttered, taking her hand, her soft fingers wrapping around her rough ones before shaking it. Kendo said with a raised eyebrow, her other hand going her side as she looked her over in thought. "Are you mute? I know sign language, if that helps." It didn't, but she appreciated the attempt. "No, that's okay," she said softly, struggling to push the words out, her dainty hand going to her chest for emphasis. "Yui, Kodai. Nice to meet you, Kodai. Guess you aren't much of a talker, huh? That's cool. I don't mind being the one doing most of the talking." She thinks she's going to like this girl. Saying her farewell, Kendo moved on to greet the next person behind her, giving her a chance to find herself. Taking a desk toward the back near the window, where people tended to avoid, she took a breath through her nose. The seat was warm from the gentle flow of the sun coming through the open window and relatively quiet, just how she liked it. Her gentle frame bending down a little to pull out her books. Greeting the people, she met a loud talker named Tokage, an even louder talker by the name of Monoma, and a soft talker by the name of Komori, the 3 of them being her desk neighbors. While Monoma came off boisterous and annoying Tokage, and Komori came off more likable. Tokage clearly did not care what anyone thought about her, and was overly teasing. Meanwhile, Komori came off shy and introverted, yet very passionate about the subject of mushrooms. Both very open about what they liked, which girls at this school seemed much nicer than the ones that were at her older school. Well, nicer is the wrong word. More genuine and less two-faced, she supposed. Straightforward. Soon the room was filled by her classmates, and she took note of each of them, her gentle gaze scanning the room, before realizing that they were missing one. Even when their homeroom teacher, Vlad King, walked into the room, did he not show up. It wasn't until he stood at his podium, clapping his papers against his desk, before opening his mouth to speak did he show. In a loud bang, a gust of wind jostled her hair, the entrance slamming open and drawing all of their gazes towards it. Standing in the doorway was the same boy that she saw matted green hair and toothbrush with a dancing on his face. He looked disheveled. His uniform not properly buttoned in places and his tie was poorly made. Haphazard and dashed on. Sorry I'm late," he stuttered, his face bright red from embarrassment. Good for you to join us, Mr. Midoriya." Vlad chuckled, his gaze drifting down to the paper with their names on it, unamused. "I'm glad you took time out of your busy day to show up. You'll let it slide considering it's the first day. Hopefully I won't have more of these in the future." Bowing toward her teacher in a fast, snappy motion, Midoriya quickly rushed to the last remaining seat, a seat that just so happened to be right next to hers. The seat skidded back as he quickly sat down with his eyes trained on the floor. There were a few laughs before the topic moved on to introductions and what they could do for the first day. Meanwhile, she still didn't take her eyes off of him, watching as he muttered quickly to himself as he fished around in her bag. Pulling out a few things out of his backpack, his head turned a little, his brilliant green eyes moving towards her, moving away and then quickly snapping back at her. His posture grew stiff as he sat straight up with an open mouth. She weirdly didn't seem to mind his gaze all that much. In fact, she thinks she might quite enjoyed it. Hello, and my name's Ayazuka Midoriya. It's nice to meet you. Now was her chance to talk to him. She could say hello and say her name is Yui Kodai. She could say it's nice to meet him. She could even say how much she would like to be his friend. She could say anything really MMM. Or she could just do that, letting out a soft, awkward chuckle. Midoriya beamed as he nodded along, turning his head to face forward. It's nice to meet you. I would love to be friends. The speed of her head turning towards him hurt her neck, her cool eyes blinking owlishly at him.
Help!
Wait, what? Standing around through a very slow and boring seminar, their class eventually found their way out into a field. Vlad King leading the charge, the class followed. More physical exams, it seems. More tests to see. Vlad King to see where they could improve and show that certain quirks were good at certain situations. After a large hairy man threw a baseball far into the air, the test had begun. There were push-ups, side steps, pull-ups, long jumps, grip strength test. She tried to do the best she could with the quirk she was born with, but it became painfully obvious that the one thing she was better at was stamina and pace. Everything else, at least one person was better than her. Turning her head, she saddled up next to Midoriya as he happily wrote into his notebook, muttering to himself as he wrote down everything he saw. She could only make out a small portions of it, but it affected her all the same. Watching another group of students run past Vlad, King pressed his thumb on a stopwatch before nodding. Excellent, you two. Next up should be Kaibara and Midoriya. Wandering up to the starting line, still scratching into his notebook, Midoriya's gaze was trained down at his writing. Even when Kaibara strode up next to him to try and show off, did Midoriya not look up, strolling over like a sassy peacock. Shame you had to be paired with me, Midoriya. I had one of the fastest sprint records in high school, and that was without me using my quirk. Chuckled Kaibara, flexing a little before getting down into a sprinter's stance. Ready, set, go. With a wave of Vlad's arm, Kaibara's torso rotated like a top before firing off, speeding toward the finish line and leaving Midoriya still standing there. A pause. Turning towards Midoriya, as he still stood there, Vlad raised a hand to cough into it. Midoriya? Jolting upright, Midoriya's notebook snapped closed before he turned towards Vlad and smiled awkwardly. Oh, right. Speeding toward the finish line, Kaibara grinned, about to beat his all-time record before in a blink of an eye. Midoriya was in front of him, the smaller boy wiggling a little in place from the sheer force of the movement. By the time Kaibara made it over the finish line in second place, Midoriya was already looking back down at his notes. Looking up to smile at Kaibara, he started to happily chat with him, firing question after question about his quirk, but Kaibara didn't seem to be answering any of them. Glaring down at the smaller boy, he pointed a finger at him angrily, which made Midoriya flinch back. Shut up and leave me alone, you little freak. Turning, he stomped back into their group with his hands firmly gripped into fist at his side. His ego was bruised, and with a pretty boy like Kaibara, a reaction like that was to be expected. Watching him go, Midoriya let out a small sigh before looking down at his notebook and continued on his writing. Without looking up at all, he somehow walked back to where she was, saddling up next to her and happily chatting away to himself. Closing her eyes, she hummed as she enjoyed the sound, letting out a small cough. A layer of dust parted from her body, her gentle eyes squinting a little as she struggled to see amongst the debris. The wall she was just knocked through cracked and splintered before collapsing on the ground. Standing over her, Midoriya had his hand extended towards her. He's lucky that she hardly speak, because she had some choice words for him. Instead, she just took his hand, being helped back to her feet. She shook her head more, just for another wave of dust to sprinkle down from around her. Sorry. Midoriya shouted embarrassed, waving his hands to and fro like he was signaling a plane. I didn't mean to run into you too hard. Are you okay?
Please recall me.
She was fine. Her ego was a little bruised, but physically she was fine. Why her teacher was forcing each of them to fight when it's only been a week since they joined UA was beyond her. Didn't they have other things to teach first? Like safety? Or even quirk control? The fact that she ended up against someone like Midoriya was even more frustrating. What was she supposed to do against someone who moved that fast? Most of the time, she didn't even see him coming at all, let alone counterattack. He was like a green blur most of the time. Good work, everyone. Come on back, and we can talk about how you could have done better. Gruffed out Vlad King from the intercoms. I've been meaning to ask Kodai, but how did you sneak around like that? You were like a ghost in the night. It was super cool. A small smile came to her lips as she hummed out. Okay, maybe she wasn't too mad at him. Oh, come on. Don't tell me that it's a S secret. T, that's not fair. I'm gonna go crazy not knowing. Sighing, Midoriya scratched at his neck. Okay, fair point. I'm not exactly an open book myself. Smiling widely, Midoriya nodded. I would love to learn more about your quirk. Like how long can you keep things shrunken, and how does the mass affect the size? Moving a mile a minute, she let out a satisfied hum, just enjoying the walk back. Who the hell cares about her quirk? I'd much rather talk about yours, Midoriya. Shouted out her partner in the exercise, Monoma, the blonde-haired man slinking out of God knows where. Must be amazing to be born so gifted, never having to try at anything. Ugh, this again. Ever since Monoma saw Midoriya's quirk firsthand, he wouldn't shut up about it, constantly trying to touch him and prod him. So much so the entire exercise he ran around trying to catch Midoriya, like something out of Roadrunner cartoon. If she didn't know better, she would think the guy had a crush. Maybe he's just an obsessive personality? Oh, thank you, Monoma. I appreciate the kind words. Midoriya muttered embarrassed next to her, obviously not picking up on Monoma's negging. Not a problem, friend. She doesn't think she likes the way he says friend, especially towards Midoriya. I would love to try your quirk out for myself. Oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. Come now, Midoriya, I thought we were friends. Reeling back like he was just struck, Midoriya's eyes widened. WER. Then why not let me take your quirk out on a test drive? Monoma said smugly, his eyes lidded as he smirked. What? You afraid I'll use it better than you? T, that's not what I'm saying at all. Then I take it you want mine? There was a pause, a worried look moving across Midoriya's face as he weighed his options. I guess, and before he could even finish his sentence, Monoma lunged forward and pat Midoriya on the shoulder. Smiling widely, Monoma looked almost manic for just a second before he started to laugh, kind of like how he got when 1A was mentioned. Then, in a gust of wind, he was gone. No one saw Monoma for the rest of that week after that. It was honestly kind of nice. It was quieter. She mostly spent those days getting to know Midoriya better and taking classes. She even made a friend with the ghost girl in their class named Yanagi Reiko. She was cool. She liked to talk about good horror movies and tarot cards. She was going to read her fortune. Walking home from school after waving goodbye to her friend, she turned a corner to find Monoma standing there panting. His uniform was torn and dirty, and he had a wild look in his eyes. I finally made it back. He cried out triumphantly only for her to walk past him. Doing a double take, Monoma turned to follow after her. Kodai, wait. Nope. She's not dealing with whatever this is. Don't you want to know where I was? Not in the slightest. It's about Midoriya. Pausing her step, she sagged a little before turning to face her classmate, her eyes narrowing sharply. Talk. Running his fingers into his messy Monoma shook his head like he had the revelations of the century. There was something about the build-up that actually piqued her interest. Maybe Monoma actually has something important to say. Midoriya's quirk makes him fast. Never mind. He's just an idiot. Blinking at him slowly, she silently raised an eyebrow at him before turning to leave again. Monoma must have sensed her annoyance because he quickly corrected himself, jogging ahead to get in front of her before reaching out and placing both his hands on her shoulders. Hold on, let me speak. The sigh she made was audible, her annoyance leaking out of her like air from a balloon, but she still stopped to listen. I thought Midoriya's quirk made him run fast, but it's more than that. He doesn't just move fast, he IS fast. Shaking her by her shoulders for emphasis, he shouted. Every part of him moves faster than anything I have ever seen, and I've tried a lot of speed quirks before. Walking back and forth, Monoma tried to put what he felt into words. When I touched his quirk, I remember absently thinking that we had lunch after this. I remember thinking how I hoped they had my favorite food, Chinese food, in the cafeteria. After that, I wondered if Chinese food from China was better, and you know what I did, Kodai? She blinked slowly before tilting her head. I ran there. I don't know how it happened, but as soon as I touched his quirk, my mind started to move a mile a minute, jumping from subject to subject. It was insane. I don't think I managed to get anything done at all. By the time his quirk wore off, I was far away from UA and had to get back here by train. Rubbing at his face, Monoma shook his head, obviously still in disbelief. Midoriya doesn't just move fast, he thinks fast. So much so everyone else is moving in slow motion. How he even has conversations with us is beyond me. The guy must have the patience of a saint. Huh, that actually is interesting. That explains a lot about him, really. She thinks she understands him a little more now. Now, if you excuse me, I need to go home and pass out. Turning away, Monoma started to stagger home, his shoulders looking defeated as he walked. Watching him go, she let out a thoughtful hum before turning the other direction, the rest of her walk home being silent. It was all chaos ever since they had landed at the USJ. What was supposed to be a nice joint practice with their sister class quickly turned into an all-out war. Some villain made out of mist ended up scattering everyone to wind and chucking them all over the USJ. Villains armed with weapons were attacking, and they were down a teacher. It did not look good. Wincing, her pale fingers touched her leg, her gaze looking down at the large gash going up it. She wasn't going to be able to walk with this injury, and the only one who could help her was, well, Midoriya sat in the corner with his hands on his ears,
need a weapon.
His voice muttering rapidly as he rocked back and forth. He was bleeding anxiety like an open wound ever since she had gotten hurt, his mind firing off on all cinders and rolling downhill fast. Crawling towards him, she leaned forward before gently placing his hand on her heart. Kodai, he muttered wide-eyed at her, his green, vibrant eyes snapping open. It's going to be okay, she whispered, her cold fingers gently caressing his cheek. I got you. Just follow my heartbeat. Kodai, there's too much. I can't. SHHH, it's okay. Breath with me. She's unsure how she's doing all of this, but her words seem to calm Midoriya down, his head nodding as he took a deep breath. Going through his breathing techniques, she showed him, her own breath matching his. Breath in on 5. Exhale slowly. Better? Swallowing, he nodded. I think so. Good. We need to get out of here. I don't know if I can... You can. Just take it slow. Try to focus on one thing at a time. Okay. Crawling behind him, she moved along his back, his hands lowering to lift her up by her legs piggyback style. Reaching forward, her cold palms coasted along his skin before gently cupped his ears, her head resting on his shoulder as she nuzzled against him, gentle not unlike a cat. Humming softly against him, she felt him bend down, his knees tensing. She felt him start to vibrate, his body moving to and fro at such a speed it kind of tickled her skin, her body starting to vibrate along with his. Closing his eyes, he muttered softly, only loud enough for her to hear, and then the two of them vanished.